It is Thursday, November 7th, 6 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe. And Billy, it feels like the morning after the election. Yeah. It's 2 mornings.
Yeah, it is.
After the election. That's because yesterday just kind of blended together because I only got about 90 minutes to sleep the night of the election. And then yesterday's just a blur.
Yeah.
But we're now 2 days removed from election.
Yes, we are. And reactions and everything else. This will be fun.
Still a lot to cover. Kamala Harris conceded yesterday. The AP calls the race for Jeff Hurd and Jeff Crank. Race is still outstanding for Gabe Evans. He's about 2,000 votes shy of Yadira Caraveo, but they're only about 80% of the votes counted. So that one has not been called yet. That one's still outstanding. Plus, we'll get in all the latest updates on the numbers coming in for Colorado. And we're going to provide some good analysis for how the ballot initiatives went here in Colorado. Kristi Burton Brown, Executive Vice President of Advanced Colorado, is going to join us to talk Amendment 80, Proposition 130, what happened to the school choice amendment, all that. And then Nicole Hunt, the fetching Nicole Hunt, as Hugh Hewitt would say, life issue analyst and spokesperson for Focus on the Family, is going to dive into Amendment 79, as well as all the other abortion amendments that took place across the country. There's some trends out there. There were 10 ballot initiatives on abortion and weren't all passed. So we'll get some insight in that. And then the ladies of The View, not happy yesterday with the results. We'll dive into how they're processing it and who they blame for electing Donald Trump. So lots to cover. Phone lines are open. Would love to hear from you. 303-696-1971. That's 303-696-1971. Or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. 720-819-5115. When we come back from Blake, Bill, we called it, dude.
What?
Do you remember the ballots in Mesa County?
Oh, yeah.
That randomly showed up.
Yeah.
People didn't get their ballots, all that stuff. And we threw an idea out there. It was just one of many. We said this could just be some person in the family, signing for somebody else. It could be a kook out there that just decided that they wanted to go grab a few ballots out of a mailbox.
Yep.
Or this may be a concerted effort to test the system.
Yeah, to prove that Tina might be right. Yeah.
Well, when we talked about that, a listener notified Kyle Clark that this was something that we had brought up.
Excellent. And I'm sure Kyle was concerned about it and was like, that's a theory. Okay, we can go with this. And maybe they're right. And I'm sure he thought about it, about what the process would be and what the motivation would be in the county as far as someone there. And how did he react? I didn't see anything.
He kind of gave us a snide remark and said, really? Well, that's some big brain thinking there.
Huh. Interesting.
Using being illegal to try to prove that the system's illegal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, guess who was right?
Hey. So you mean Kyle was right about us having big brains?
Yes, exactly.
That's very nice.
Exactly.
It's very nice.
Here from CPR late last night. 2 friends schemed to test Colorado's mail ballot system and are now charged with felonies.
Yes. And it wasn't that hard to get to that conclusion.
And we just put it out there as one of 3 possible. And it really could have been any of them. It could have been the family member. It could have been a kook that just decided to go collect a bunch of ballots and was just like, I'm going to fill them out for my candidate.
Yeah, exactly. Because I want to have these votes. Yeah.
Or it could have been, Tina Peters is in prison. How secure is this?
Yeah.
Let's go risk it all to find out.
Well, I think my guess is that they thought Tina was right. And so they thought, well, obviously we can prove she's right by doing this. They don't believe us. They don't believe her 3 reports. They don't believe all the stuff that we've seen online. They don't believe what Mike Lindell has told us. So we are finally going to prove it. Tina wasn't able to because of the Biden Department of Justice or the flying spaghetti monster cursed her or something. I don't know, whatever it is. But that idea was they went out there to prove it. Sure. Yeah. That was one of 3 things we talked about because it was completely and totally possible. And it's nice to hear that Kyle Clark complimented us on the size of our noggins. That's very nice. It's very nice. And again, here's the other part that's interesting is it shows his filter on when he was examining the story,
Yeah.
what he was and wasn't open to. And again, he presents himself as a journalist.
Yeah.
And the journalist is supposed to be open to and consider all possibilities and then report on what is going to happen. Not in this case, though. No, not in this case. Because just like when he knew they were code violations over at the apartment building, he knew immediately with this one, he knew what was going on because he wears that sport coat and is so good on TV. So, of course.
He is so smooth on TV.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, you got this story, and I've got to think with what could happen to Jenna Griswold, Bill, there could be an entire wing in our prison system dedicated to people that got the election issue wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Sure could be. Sure. And I hope the listener that reached out to Kyle will reach out again today and say, wow, look at this, who was right. I hope they'll reach out again and just point out who was right on this one.
For your most trusted news, turn to Jeff and Bill at 710 KNUS.
No, don't do that.
Neither of us actual journalists.
Yeah, no.
But speaking of good news, let's turn into news and commentary with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, you guys. You know, I woke up this morning and I was like, wait a minute, we don't have the rest of the week off?
I kind of felt the same way.
Did you feel that way?
Yeah.
I mean, for a split second, I'm like, wait a minute. After the election, we don't go back to work for like 2 months, right?
Well, I love our founders, but putting it on a Tuesday?
Yeah,
come on.
I know.
It is a long week for those of us.
Right. Every 4 years. All right. Good to talk to you guys. 22 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 39 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story. Well, no, that's Steve Kerr. We'll get to that later. President Biden will address the nation this morning about Donald Trump reclaiming the White House. Biden spoke with Trump Wednesday and congratulated him on his election victory. He also praised Kamala Khan following her concession to Trump. She said that her heart was full of gratitude for her supporters and thanked them for all of their hard work. Heavy hearts are being felt across Colorado for an officer killed in the line of duty. He was hit last night in Golden while investigating a crash on Highway 58. Police say of the 3 police at the scene, 2 were run over by a suspected drunk driver. Both got trapped underneath the car, and only one survived with serious injuries. The victim's wife asked his name not be released. The police chief describes him as an amazing human being with a long, stellar career in the military. Once again, another reminder, if you're going to drink, do not drive, please. These guys are heroes and they're on the side of the road, and it frightens me every time I see this scene. Students in Douglas County are staying home today because district officials are worried about icy roads. The school district said that snow accumulation was higher than anticipated on Wednesday and that classes probably should have been canceled instead of being delayed. A winter storm watch for the Denver area goes into effect tonight. The race for the 8th district congressional seat is still too close to call, as Jeff and Billy were talking about this morning after polls closed in Colorado. Election returns from last night showed Republican Gabe Evans narrowing the lead of Democratic Congresswoman Yadiro Caraveo by about 2,400 votes. Republicans are expressing confidence they'll take control of the House once all the votes are counted. Some House races are still undecided, and the GOP needs a dozen more seats to keep control. If they win those seats, it would give Republicans control of both houses of Congress and the White House, of course. A California wildfire is destroying homes and forcing evacuations near the Pacific coast. Several fires broke out in the Southern California hills on Wednesday, fueled by gusty Santa Ana winds. Cuba's energy grid is collapsing after Hurricane Rafael made landfall on Wednesday. The state-run grid operator is blaming Rafael for knocking out power to Cuba's entire population, some 10 million people. The hurricane is now moving into the Gulf of Mexico and possibly toward the U.S. Gulf Coast. The opening bell rings this morning after stocks closed sharply higher on Wednesday following DJT's victory. At the closing bell, the Dow gained over 1,500 points, marking a record high. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Nuggets beat the Thunder last night. Avalanche take on the Jets tonight. And Steve Kerr talking about the DJT win.
I believe in democracy, and I think the American people have spoken and voted for Trump, and I want him to do well the next 4 years. I want our country to do well. So I'm just thankful that there wasn't any voting fraud this time. You know, it's last time, I mean, all those illegal immigrants who crashed the border and raped and murdered people and then voted 6 times. That was unfortunate, but thankfully.
Okay, he was on the right track. Then he gets sarcastic and he says, thankfully there wasn't any voter fraud. And he goes on and on and on. And so last night in Boston, they introduced the Warriors, Golden State Warriors, where he's the head coach. And then they're in Boston and they announce his name. And it's kind of interesting.
The head coach of the Golden State Warriors.
And that's in Boston, Jeff. That's in Boston, not known for being all the way right. So he goes on and on and on, and he's sarcastic about that. And I would ask him about some statistics in 2020, but we'll get into that later. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, you know, we're going to get to the ladies of the view here. And in many ways, they're rational in some of their post-election analysis.
Yeah.
In other ways, they're totally irrational, and you'll hear both sides here. But
yeah,
you haven't seen the big riots yet. I'm going back to 2016 in my mind. The first big women's march was right after the inauguration. Mm-hmm. So it took a few months for things to build. But I wonder, too, if the victory was so resounding on Tuesday night that you're not getting the big protests, the big pushback from the radical left, because it was kind of a big win.
Without a doubt. No, I agree with you. I mean, I was thinking about that 2 days ago. It has to be the whole too big to rig thing.
Yeah.
Because if it isn't, then they can try to, enact all this stuff and execute it. But I agree, as when it's in their face, that dominant like that, it's very, very difficult, because once again, it's about us. It's not about the government. It's about we, the people. So nice job, everyone getting out and voting. Doesn't matter if you voted on the left or right. Hey, you voted, and that's a great thing. That's what this country is all about. Jeff and Bill continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The same storm that brought us the snow yesterday is going to come back for a repeat performance. Mostly cloudy, redeveloping light snow as the day wears on. Temperatures in the low to mid-30s. Snow showers tonight, lows mid-20s. Snow becoming likely again Friday, and snow likely Friday night into early Saturday, with additional accumulations likely. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist on day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
A Keurig K Supreme Plus Smart Serve coffee maker valued at $200. Get it now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're still providing all the election analysis you need. Not all the races called yet. Gabe Evans and your dear Caraveo is still out there, but Jeff Hurd wins in Congressional District 3. Jeff Crank wins in Congressional District 5. Lauren Boebert wins in Congressional District 4. Got a chance to talk a little briefly yesterday with John Fabricatori. Man, what a fighter. That one didn't work out for conservatives in Congressional District 6. We're stuck with Jason Crow. Oh, Lord. But John would have been so great in that seat, and he's evaluating what's going to be next for him, and we're going to have him on, hopefully, once that happens, and we'll talk all about the race. But let's go to the phone lines. We want to get your perspective as you have now sat 24 hours plus removed from this election. What are your thoughts on all of it? Melissa, Lakewood, good morning, Melissa.
Good morning. I just wanted to point out an article that I clicked on last night, but you scroll through it and it's pictures of the people crying at the rally, and then at the end, the last picture, it's the everybody's gone, and it shows the parking lot or whatever, and there's just trash everywhere.
Oh man, they just let. Oh, this is from her concession speech or whatever. It's all over my ex accounts, or the kind of wailing and the frustration from Kamala Harris supporters following the election. And I understand the frustration. Believe me, I've absolutely finished an election night in tears after working very hard for candidates that I thought would do great. Never in my mind, though, thought to film it. Never thought, I'm going to put this on social media, my crying and wailing and frustration to be used against me for the rest of my life. So I don't get that. But Melissa, I want to talk to you. I believe this is Melissa from Lakewood that comes to a lot of our events. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So now I know your demographics a little bit, but I want to get your perspective. This was an article in the News Republic or the New Republic yesterday. How white women doomed Kamala Harris and the Democrats again. And this comes from some of the early exit polls. Donald Trump has won the majority of white women voters for the third straight time, even after destroying abortion rights, even after a judge went to painstaking lengths to clarify that Donald Trump assaulted E. Jane Carroll, and even as the Harris campaign targeted the imaginary silent majority of women hiding their political views from their husbands, 52% of white American women showed us who they are: Trump supporters. And when you combine that with an Atlantic article that looked at the top issues on how Donald Trump won everywhere, they say it came down to the economy. That out of all the issues listed, abortion issues, immigration issues, threats to democracy, Donald Trump's character, those types of things, at the end of the day, what it was really about, the driving issue, was the economy, the cost of groceries. People are not confident in the direction of this country. Does that seem to play right in your mind, Melissa?
Yes, I would agree with that. And I would also argue that if the white women would have voted for either way, the white women would have been to blame somehow. But it would have been pointed in a good way for them.
It does seem like they are running after that demographic and blaming. And there's a lot of reactions to this New Republic article going, blaming white women for dooming Kamala Harris, that's a way to win them over for the next election. So, Melissa,
Exactly.
I appreciate your
Thank
call. It's always great to see you live at our events, and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. So, was it the economy that really broke this down? Well, the ladies of The View were diving into it, trying to get a sense of what happened. By the way, they walk out, most of them wearing black, all of them wearing dark. They seem to be mourning. They were not happy with the results of the election, but we'll start it off. It gets into a little cultural resentment. Is that the new language for you just being an outright racist? Well, here's the ladies on The View blaming cultural resentment. It's not clicking on my side, Billy.
I'm surprised at the result, but I'm not surprised. As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. Mm-hmm. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Well, I think it, I'm
cultural resentment. Was that the reason? When she went into that, and then later, one of the text messengers points us out, they spent a lot of time talking about, quote, uneducated white women during the View, and someone has to remind them, no, it's just not college educated white women, but to say that they're uneducated white women. But was race really the issue? Is that why Kamala Harris failed? Because, as according to the ladies in The View, it's cultural resentment, which is really just another term for saying you're a racist.
I don't agree that cultural resentment necessarily means you're a racist. And I think that they have a point as far as part of the cultural resentment being the backlash against Kamala and not race. Let's talk about the two words that get our audience fired up and get me called a lot of names on the text message machine. And that is DEI and diversity and inclusion and those things and the woke. How mad is our audience at the woke? How badly do we need to destroy the woke? I've heard for as long as we've been on the air that the woke is destroying our institutions. Yeah. It's tearing apart our military. It's tearing apart our families, tearing apart our schools, tearing apart our colleges. That's cultural resentment. That's resentment to a culture that is moving in this direction. That's what it is. I disagree with how she started with the idea of doing it based on breaking down on race. But the cultural resentment, yeah, she's 110% right, because it's the backlash for the things like the DEI and the woke. And
so I look at DEI and woke as not cultural resentment. It's just racism. That's why you get a knee-jerk reaction against it.
But again, remember, you started with the definition of cultural resentment being racism. And so now you've placed DEI and woke into racism. And that is exactly my... No, they're not, but that is exactly my point.
They are. Those two, those things are exactly, that's why you get the knee-jerk reaction to it, because it's actually judging people on their skin color.
No, that's not really what woke and the idea of DEI is, but that's the interpretation, and this is exactly why she's right. Because of this is the cultural resentment, because you resent the DEI and the woke movement, and so you lump that into racism, and then you say this is what the argument is. Yeah. So yes, she's right.
It's looking at the actual work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and critical race theory, and just going, this is just racism. It is judging people by their race and providing certain benefits to people based upon race.
CRT doesn't provide benefits to certain people based on the race, nor does DEI. That's not the. I understand that it has been with the movie Am I Racist? I understand there are a whole bunch of people out there doing DEI that shouldn't have been, and a whole bunch of people that were out there that shouldn't have been placed in positions. But that doesn't mean that's what DEI is. We have a lot of people out there that represent both parties that don't necessarily represent the core of the party. For a while, Nick Fuentes talked about being conservative and being a proud Republican. You wouldn't judge him and say that he's now breaking away from the party. But we have people on the edges. You have people that are very, very, very far left that think that we shouldn't be driving any cars at all, and we all should be on bicycles. but that doesn't represent the larger group. So the fringes don't necessarily represent the larger group. So the fringes of the people that were idiots doing the DEI stuff, yeah, that's completely and totally fair to critique them. But that's the issue, is that the DEI and the woke get lumped into what you said, the racism, which becomes the cultural resentment. And she's right. She's right about this. Yes, it is. And that's fine. That's fine that the country can say we go back this direction. But that's difficult for many people in this country to look at.
So what is the cultural resentment? She talks about a South Indian black woman marrying a Jew, and that set her up to lose?
Again, I disagree with her defining it through race and religion. I don't think she's doing it properly. But is she right about it being cultural resentment? Yes. Yes.
So what's the resentment then?
It's like the woke and the DEI and the acceptance. Yeah. Yes.
But
that's
I'm having a hard
resentment.
time understanding
it's
what
the idea. We think the woke and the DEI
is in your mind. It's not based on race. What is the cultural resentment?
Woke is? Because woke has been around for 20, 30 years. And it's been the time.
I think that's a stretch. 20 or 30 years?
Yeah, it was originally used as a lyric in a song. That's where it came from.
Now, what it is,
I know, but wait, no.
What it is your interpretation basing policy upon race and a rejection of the Martin Luther King worldview that we judge people by the content of their character. It's the exact opposite of it. And did you ever see the little image of the people trying to like look over a fence? This is what the woke people use all the time. There's images of three people trying to look at a baseball game over a fence. And they're like, because of systemic historical racism, white people get to stand a little bit higher than the black and the Latinos. And so woke is seeking to bring equity. But in order to bring equity, we got to bring the white people down a notch, and we're going to judge people based upon their skin color and seek to provide more benefits to them, more opportunities, because of a belief that America is historically racist. And so at the end of the day, it's simply judging people based upon their race and the reallocation of resources because of it.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily correct. And
it's
interesting.
I'm just using their own images.
Yeah, I know, but what they're talking about is that, yes, that the playing field in the game, we all didn't start out at the same portion. And woke is about acknowledging that, saying not everybody started at the same position. So now let's go forward and judge everybody as equals. Let's acknowledge the systems that were in place and just be open and look at them and acknowledge them. It's not about tilting the playing field and trying to correct past behaviors. That's a misinterpretation of what the core is.
But that's what they've been doing.
There have been
that's literally like affirmative action.
But affirmative action doesn't do that. Doesn't say that we need to take these people that aren't qualified and lift them up based on their race color. That's not what affirmative action was ever about. But again, that's the pushback that I hear about the cultural resentment. You just went back to affirmative action. Yeah. Again, cultural resentment, this idea of this baked in racism. And I have a little bit of an issue when we bring up that Martin Luther King quote, because it is misapplied and misappropriated in that exact example. But woke is about the idea of acknowledging not everybody started at the same place and not everybody starts at the same place now. So we should acknowledge those differences and try to treat everybody equal. That's it. That's all it is.
Yeah,
that's all woke is.
I wish I could agree with that, because I think that's like where they wanted to stop, and it just kept going. And that's why you get the movie Am I Racist from Matt Walsh, where you're like, all right, if I smile too much to deal with cultural appropriation, or not cultural, but historical racism, if I'm smiling too much at a black guy, I am appropriating the racism of our ancestors. And if I don't smile enough, and we end up tied in all these knots. And so I think a lot of people in this election were just tired of that. I think they just want to judge somebody by their character.
Yeah.
And all of these knots that you have to be tied into, they just don't want to do that anymore.
And that is cultural resentment. And the problem of that is, when you're talking about that, people just want to judge someone based on the content of their character. That's the problem.
Why is that the problem?
Because of the words judge. And this is the issue.
And we judge people all the time.
I know, but hang on a sec. This is why that Martin Luther King quote is misappropriated and used incorrectly in the form in which you use it, in my opinion. Because what you're saying is that we need to judge people based on the content of your character. Okay, who gets to do the judging?
We all make judgments.
I know,
on everything.
But hang on a sec.
Who we hire, who we're married, who we're friends with.
I know, but your judgments are based on the content of your character, correct? That's your judgments are made on.
No. That quote's about judging somebody on the content of their character.
Hang on a sec, though. I'm not doing the quote right now. But your judgment is going to be based on the content of your character personally. I'm not quoting Martin Luther King. I'm just talking about any individual judgment will also be based on the content of their character individually.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, of course. Yes. So when we say we need to judge people based on the content of the other person's character, we are not acknowledging the content of the character of the person doing the judging. The person doing the judging can be a complete arsehole. But then we say we give them the right to judge other people, and we should respect that. That's the issue. Is that we're missing?
So lost, dude.
I know. This is why it's difficult. But the issue is
we're talking about whether or not we judge people on race versus some other thing.
Yeah,
and that other thing is not race, but the quality and the content of somebody's character.
Yeah. So how do you think Nick Fuentes would look at someone and judge someone on the content of their character if they believed in woke and DEI? How would he judge them? Based on the Martin Luther King, premise, he would probably look at them and denigrate them. He would not think they are good enough to be Americans. He would question their allegiance to our society and their purpose in our society.
Okay.
But he is judging in his mind. He's judging them based on the content of his character. That's why it's a misappropriation in my mind of that.
Of his character. No, did that.
Wait, no.
But Billy, this was all about whether or not we judge people based on race.
You're the one that brought up the Martin Luther King.
Yes, that's what Martin Luther King was talking about.
And what I'm showing you is that Nick Fuentes can be doing exactly what Martin Luther King said in his mind by judging someone else based on the content of their character, but based on his twisted character, his judgment can be incorrect.
Yes.
That's why it's a misappropriation of the idea that we all just want to judge people based on the content of their character, because some of us...
Well, of course, you can have a bad internal character and bad internal judgment thing.
Yeah.
But Billy, this was about whether or not we judge somebody based upon their race.
But hang on. No. You went back to the Martin Luther King thing, and I'm just saying that's why I have a problem.
Race.
No, but what I'm talking about is it ignores the person making the judgment. What it says is the person making the judgment is always right. And I don't think you would agree with that.
Nobody's ever said that.
That's how that quote is used.
Nobody's ever said that somebody's judgment is. Jesus Christ was the only one who gets to say his judgment was always right.
You just said we need to get to a place where we judge someone based on the content of the character. We're never asking about the content of the character of the person doing the judging.
You're judging Nick Fuentes by the content of his character.
But yeah, I know that. And I'm acknowledging that. Yes. No, I acknowledge that. And that's the thing is I understand that I'm doing that, and I'm doing it based on my personal preferences and judgments and understanding where I'm coming from. Yes, I know this is a really, really complex, difficult subject. This is something that is fairly esoteric. I know this is difficult, but that's why I disagree with the use of that phrase, because in my mind, when people use that phrase to push back on things like DEI and woke and inclusion, it's used as an excuse for the person making the judgment. The person making the judgment is allowed to make whatever choice they want, and it's the person that is being judged is the issue. That's the problem.
Me
and that's
seems
not
like
what Martin Luther King was saying.
Wild off-ramp to not deal with the actual issue, which is DEI and critical race theory are actually racist thinking.
No, it's not. But that's the cultural resentment. And even if you and I...
That's a rejection of racism.
But hang on a sec. Even if you and I disagree on that, and that is fair, reasonable people can disagree on this issue. But because you view it as racism, that's the cultural rejection she was talking about, the resentment. That's exactly it. Again, I'm not trying to judge.
I disagree. She jumped into Southeast Asian, Black, Jewish.
I started with the premise of she focusing it through race was incorrect.
Yes.
But her point is correct, based on exactly this conversation we're having right now. And it's fair for you to look at DEI and equity and inclusion. That's fine. But it is a rejection of that culture and resentment. Yes, that's what she's talking about. She did a horrible job explaining it, but she's right.
Well,
She's
I disagree.
110% right.
I just think it's a rejection of racism. And if you could say, well, rejecting racism is cultural resentment. I just think that they're actually rejecting the idea.
Yeah, what about the LGBTQ community? Because that wouldn't be racism. But they're part of that cultural resentment as well. What about them?
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if it's a cultural resentment.
Yeah,
so
sure
is disagreeing with somebody's lifestyle resentment then?
Well, explain to me why the Colorado State GOP party came out with a statement that said that God hates pride and that the LGBTQ community are groomers.
Yeah, I mean,
that's resentment.
You could
that is core resentment. Yes, it is. When you accuse someone of being a groomer, that's resentment. I can't figure out what else. You're not trying to lift them up. You're not trying to help them out. That's
but
resentment.
It seems like there's a negative
thing.
connotation around resentment that's not rooted in logic, right? It's just kind of this like guttural, emotional hatred of people.
It can be both rooted in emotions and logic.
And so
it
can be
both.
You can be logically resentful. I don't know. It seems like resentful is a loaded question.
No, absolutely you can. You can be logically and emotionally resentful. Yeah,
both
you
of those
and I
can be
are
way over time on this.
Yeah, we are.
All right. Did you know that last year over 49% of homes listed did not sell with the real estate agent who took the initial listing? This cost home sellers thousands of dollars in lower offers and painful holding costs. Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams have a track record of selling homes fast and get their home sellers 6.1% more money on average, netting their sellers $30,500 more in their pocket. They do this using their proven proprietary systems and guarantees. Go with the team that doesn't just make empty promises, but can actually provide proof of their experience and track record of getting homes sold for top dollar. Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team is so confident in the service they provide and the results that they can get you that if you're not happy, you can cancel at any time at no cost to you. This is their cancellation promise. Call 833-301-SOLD. That's 833-301-SOLD or visit gayasthebuyers.com. That's GAYE hasthebuyers.com. Oh boy, text messages are blowing up. Breadman, DEI is insane in America because we're multi-ethnic and cultural. We are Prussian and
cultural
brown.
resentment. Yep, that's exactly it. Again, she did a horrible job explaining it. But the core, she's right. And she's right. And that's fair. That's fine. I'm not sitting here denigrating anybody because they're doing that. It is fine to make that choice. As Peter Boyle's dad said, it's your mouth. You can haul it if you want to.
People resentful and then not saying that you're denigrating them. I don't know. That seems like a reach for me.
Okay.
Bill, when did DEI come up as a concern to voters? All I heard was economic immigration and abortion. Hostin is making it about race and misogyny.
Yeah, I don't think it is all about race and misogyny, but I think your point about cultural resentment is there. And the reason when I talk about it coming up is what happens every time we talk about transgendered rights or transgendered people. What happens when we get into that idea of diversity? What are the calls that we get? What are the text messages we get? Right there, just like Breadman. It's insanity. It's everything else. That is the cultural resentment. Yes, that's exactly it. When did it come up? It comes up every single day. It comes up every single day. And there are people in our communities where it's an issue for them every single day. So that's where it comes up. And the people that are mad about the drag show story hours. And we had a missive from the Colorado GOP party chair talking about the LGBTQ community. God hates them and they're groomers. You don't tell me that's some sort of a voting issue. Not when they point that out. Please.
So
please,
this is resentment, bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. I mean, that's where I think we're so confused on it. I don't think that's the definition of how people feel when they disagree with an issue, that it's bitter indignation having treated unfairly. All right, we're way past that. We'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Awayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. Voters in Arizona have approved a measure that lets local police arrest migrants who crossed into the state illegally from Mexico. Proposition 314 also allows state judges to order their deportation. In addition, law enforcement would be shielded from all civil lawsuits. It has become the latest state to take border security into its own hands after they say the federal government grossly failed the American people by allowing tens of millions of illegals into the country. Arizona becomes the latest state to test the limits of what local authorities can do to curb illegal migration, with GOP lawmakers in Texas, Iowa, and Oklahoma passing similar immigration measures within the last year. In each case, federal courts have halted the state's efforts to enforce them. Republicans in the Arizona legislature say the measure is needed to help secure the border, and it isn't their first. They approved a migrant smuggling ban in 2005, banned employers from hiring illegal migrants in 2007, and required police to ask the legal status of suspected illegal migrants in 2010. The U.S. stock market, Elon Musk's Tesla, banks, and Bitcoin are storming higher as investors bet on what President Donald Trump's return to the White House will mean for the economy and the world. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 1,438 points, or 3.4%. The S&P 500 rose 2.4%, and the NASDAQ Composite rose 2.8%.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Awayo, Salem News Channel.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
A Keurig K Supreme Plus Smart Serve coffee maker valued at $200. Get it now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Bill and I just blew right through the entire first 40 minutes of the show debating what the definition of cultural resentment is.
As always, it's my fault.
Because The View says, no, that's not the economy is not the major issue. It's cultural resentment. And then they get into the structure of democracy and the safety of democracy. And this is why what everything Kamala Harris was talking about didn't connect with voters, because it is the economy, stupid.
Yeah, that is the dominant issue. But I do appreciate, I know we got to step aside for a break, but I do appreciate every single time the text messengers text in and get mad at me over this issue and then prove me right. Thank you so much. Yes, they are. Right. Because what they're doing is they're arguing about, and they're arguing from a point of cultural resentment about why they resent this, why they hate this.
Somebody disagreed with somebody's not resentment.
Exactly what they're saying when they say it's insane and stuff. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Keep those texts coming.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Speaking of resentment, Iggy is texting, I resent you haven't done You Choose the News yet. So, Billy, we got to give the people what they want.
Yes. It is time that we put away our disagreements and questions about cultural resentment. It's time to just basically resent our fellow human beings. It is called You Choose the News. It is America's favorite fake radio news game show. I have scoured the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find really dumb stories about us humans, giving them even dumber headlines to play this fake radio news game show. Why? Nobody in charge has any idea what happens when they are not awake. Their alarms don't go off for another 8 minutes, and we are going to take full advantage. But again, it's a secret, so shh. Alrighty. Gentlemen, Blake Olson from the newsroom, Jeff Hunt in the studio. Here are your choices this morning. Headline number 1, Government in Action, Maple Syrup Edition. Headline number 2, well, this explains the election. Headline number 3, this will definitely keep them happy. And headline number 4, Expected Consequences. Your choice, sir.
I'm taking Government in Action Maple Syrup Edition.
Yes, Government in Action Maple Syrup Edition. Citing national security concerns, the federal government in Canada, America's hat, has ordered TikTok to shutter. Yes, you have to close down your offices. However, Canadians can still access the app if they want to. They just decided no offices. That seems effective. That seems super effective.
I was wondering about TikTok. Is it still Chinese spy machine?
Well, yes and no. Yeah. I mean, it's not totally owned by the Chinese because they've tried to divest themselves of it because of what we've been doing. But yeah, it's still a spy machine. And that's part of the reason that they're closing down the offices is they thought the people in the offices were doing the spy stuff. But in Canada, you can still have the app because they'll still let you spy on you individually. Just not from the office. Yeah.
Not from a cubicle.
Yeah, that's all it is. You got to make it, they're outsourcing the spying. That's all it is. All righty, Blake Olson. This explains the election. This will keep them happy or expected consequences.
This explains the election.
This explains the election. I love the fact you've chosen this one because we are staying right here in our very own Colorado, driving just a little south of us to Colorado Springs. Have you heard about Ballot Initiative 2D and 300 that both passed in Colorado Springs on election day? Well, they disagree with each other. See, Ballot Initiative 2D prohibits the sale of recreational marijuana in the city. 300 allows existing medical marijuana shops to sell recreational marijuana and outlines a tax going to be used for mental health. So one says no, the other one says yes. The issue is one's a city charter, writes into the city charter. The other one is an ordinance. Now, the
charter wins, right?
The argument is going to be whether or not the charter will win over the ordinance, but there are some questions because if the ordinance, if they both were approved by voters, there's going to be a question about if the voters say both of these are okay, you can't necessarily say, well, the voters are wrong on this one and they're right on this one.
Yes, exactly. And I'm not sure you can go which percentage is a little bit more.
Exactly.
You can't.
That's
just winner takes all.
Yeah. So that's the problem is when you have the competing initiatives, they're going to go to the court systems and then someone's going to tell them what to do. So
let me help you with all this.
Yeah.
Marijuana is stupid.
All right.
Just help.
Makes a lot of money though, but it's actually falling. I saw the market's falling in Colorado. Yeah, very badly. All righty.
Bad drug to use.
Final choice this morning.
Good.
This will keep them happy or expected consequences.
This will keep them happy.
Yeah, this will keep them happy. Oh, it's all about joy and happiness. If you've been listening to the first 45 minutes of the show, that's all that we are about this morning. I'm teasing. But Intel has decided they've got to keep their employees happy. And how are they going to do it? No, not working from home. No, not more vacations. No, not bonuses. Wait, raises? No, free tea and coffee. Yes. As part of a $10 billion budget cut a couple of years ago, Intel decided no more free coffee and tea. You can't have that. No luxuries. They've decided that hurts morale. So they're going to give you back the coffee and tea because it is the least expensive option they have in front of them. So, of course, they're going to choose that. So, yes, hopefully everybody's going to be much, much happier with their free coffee.
How did we go from companies with like free masseuses to
money.
Like
childcare?
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe it was that tax.
Well, it's money. They figured out that was very, very expensive. And then it has to be rolled into it. Yeah, that's part of it.
Where did all the money go?
So, yeah, that's it. That's the
question I asked.
I'm going to get more free coffee in a sec.
Yeah, that's the one perk we got here.
It is great.
It's not bad.
It's good coffee.
Glad to see that Intel's joining the ranks. All right, we'll continue. Why did Kamala Harris lose? Is it cultural resentment? Or is it just the economy, stupid? You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Call us. Tell me why I'm wrong.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Billy Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You woke up in the greatest country in history. Donald Trump elected again, number 47, coming in just a few months, along with a Republican Senate and maybe a Republican House. What are they going to do with all that energy, excitement, and freedom? What are you going to do when our policies are going so much better? We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to dive into the View because I only got one clip played before it set Billy and I off into a discussion as to whether or not cultural resentment is just another term for you're a racist for not supporting Kamala Harris, or is there real cultural resentment there?
That was fun, though.
That was fun.
That was a lot of fun. We'll try to put that aside. We'll do that one later because, oh boy, that could go for a while. We got some other stuff to get to. This is going to be fun, though. Keep listening. We're going to have a lot of fun today.
So what really caused Kamala Harris to lose? And why did Donald Trump win? Not just a little bit, but with pretty significant margins, with the American people sending a strong message. We'll get to that. But first, news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. 23 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 39 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, DJT is putting together a transition team before Inauguration Day on January 20th. He'll fill about 4,000 positions, including 1,200 that require Senate approval. That should be easier with the Republican-controlled Senate. President Biden is preparing to address the nation this morning. That should be fun. I wonder how tempted he is to wear a MAGA hat. Republicans are expressing confidence they'll take control of the House once all the votes are counted. Some House races are still undecided, and the GOP needs a dozen more seats to keep control. If they win those seats, it would give Republicans control of both houses of Congress and the White House, of course. The race for the 8th district congressional seat is still too close to call. More than a day after the polls closed here in Colorado, election returns from last night showed Republican Gabe Evans narrowing the lead of Democratic Congresswoman Yadiro Caraveo to about 2,400 votes. Meanwhile, Democratic congressional candidate Adam Frisch conceded his race to Republican Jeff Hurd in the 3rd congressional district. Hurd will replace Republican Lauren Boebert, who, of course, won her 4th district race. The Federal Reserve wraps up a 2-day meeting today with a highly anticipated announcement on interest rates. Most analysts predict the central bank will cut rates by a quarter point or 25 basis points, the first lowering of rates in 4 years. The opening bell rings this morning after stocks closed sharply higher on Wednesday following Trump's victory. Students in Douglas County are staying home today because the district officials are worried about icy roads. The school district said that snow accumulation was higher than anticipated Wednesday, and the classes probably should have been canceled instead of being delayed. A winter storm watch for the Denver area will go into effect tonight. A Colorado police officer killed in the line of duty last night. He was hit in Golden while investigating a crash on Highway 58. Police say of the 3 officers on the scene, 2 were run over by a suspected drunk driver. Both got trapped underneath the car, and only one survived with serious injuries. The victim's wife asked that his name not be released. The police chief described him as an amazing human being with a long, stellar career in the military. Cuba's energy grid is collapsing after Hurricane Rafael made landfall on Wednesday. Rafael knocked out power to Cuba's entire population, to some 10 million people. The hurricane is now moving into the Gulf of Mexico and possibly toward the U.S. Gulf Coast. Comedy time. Whoopi on The View after the election.
She did what she did. She was everywhere. She talked to everybody, and people didn't come out. I don't know why, and it doesn't even matter. He's now the president. I'm still not going to say his name. That's not going to change.
I have faith that some good, decent people are going to work for him. I've heard from some folks today. I think there's some reasons to be hopeful that people who believe in public service in the country are going to go.
The thing that I wanted to finish up with is this whole.
Nah, you don't deserve it. Nuggets beat the Thunder last night. Avs take on the Jets tonight. 20 in Westminster, 21 in Highlands Ranch, 23 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue. Donald Trump is the president, Whoopi. He will be in a couple months. He was elected president. Yeah, baby. Take that, Whoopi. Okay. Blake Olson, News Talk, 710 KNUS.
The same storm that brought us the snow yesterday is going to come back for a repeat performance. Mostly cloudy, redeveloping light snow as the day wears on. Temperatures in the low to mid-30s. Snow showers tonight, lows mid-20s. Snow becoming likely again Friday, and snow likely Friday night into early Saturday, with additional accumulations likely. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Next Friday, like a week from tomorrow, Colorado Christian University invites you to an exclusive luncheon and lecture featuring the 48th Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, and his wife, former Second Lady Karen Pence. He put out a statement yesterday. What do you think is going through his head?
I don't know. That'd be interesting. Yeah.
This will be a unique opportunity to hear from him. In partnership with the Centennial Institute and CCU President Eric Hogue, this event offers a unique opportunity to engage in conversation with Vice President Pence, one of America's most dedicated public servants, sharing his insights on the future of the conservative movement. Be among the first to experience the new Armstrong Center as CCU launches its President Speaker Series on this historic occasion. Go to ccu.edu/Pence to get tickets and learn more. Limited tickets are available for breakfast with Karen Pence, lunch with Mike Pence, and morning and evening lectures. Throughout the day, you'll engage in conversations on leadership, faith, and service with those distinguished guests. Please join CCU on November 15th for these events with Mike and Karen Pence. Go to ccu.edu/Pence to get tickets and learn more. That's ccu.edu/Pence. All right. So the ladies on The View all yesterday wearing dark colors, many dressed in black, mourning what happened to Kamala Harris. We heard one clip already blaming cultural resentment for the vote. Here was another one where I go, they just missed the issue. This is, I believe, Joy Behar. Oh, you got to click on it, Billy. For whatever reason, my touch screen's not working today.
That's weird. Okay, so we're doing number 2.
State of Democracy.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
You know what gets me? The exit polls showed, according to our research department here at ABC News, the state of democracy was the top issue to voters overall. So that says that they voted for a guy who wanted to overthrow the election, who also said he would be a dictator on day one. And they also said that democracy was number one. So I'm concluding that maybe they don't believe him.
But I think it means different things. I think democracy means different things.
It means a different
to different
thing.
people.
Well, when we were trying to overthrow a legitimate election and you say you're going to be a dictator, I don't know how you interpret that any other way, frankly. So I can only conclude that they don't believe he's going to do that. And I hope they're right. I hope that they are right.
The state of democracy, the top issue? State of democracy. That's when you know your polling company is just out of it. The idea that the state of democracy was the top issue for voters is just, well, that's a reach. Other exit polls showing clearly it was the economy that was the top issue. In fact, that's why white women came over and voted for Kamala Harris, is because the economy, stupid, is the top issue.
I would agree that economy is a top issue, but can you see how the state of democracy could be very persuasive to both sides?
Yes, to your point, I can see how it'd be on both sides.
Yeah, both sides. And
number one.
Well, thing is, and you're right about how they look at it, and it shows, in my opinion, the myopic way that Joy Behar views the world. I feel Joy Behar has a very difficult time taking herself outside of her body and her perception and looking at the world from anybody else's view. I think she really struggles with that, because based on our conversations, again, with our listeners, we have heard for months that they are concerned about the state of democracy. And it's the things like the lawfare, locking up your political opponents, cutting down on free speech, doing the freedom. That would be, if you believe that's happening, then you feel democracy is in peril. And on the other side, if you believe that Donald Trump is going to invalidate any elections and become a dictator and everything else, then you're afraid for our democracy. Yeah, but that example, and I'm really glad you brought that up, shows the problem with the conversation on The View. I oftentimes say people have come to a conclusion and work backwards. It's exactly what we heard from Joy Behar. She started with the conclusion and worked backwards. She didn't listen to what was going on.
To your point, Billy, if Kamala Harris's campaign runs that poll and looks down and says state of democracy is the top issue, what are they going to do? They're going to go out there and go, Donald Trump's a dictator. Donald Trump's a dictator. You're never going to have America again. Democracy will be ruined. And so you end up driving your campaign messaging down the wrong road.
And could you actually encourage the other side to vote, because that's your message? I think you just hit on something brilliant there, that I really think that somewhere along the line, there was an internal poll or information that showed them state of democracy being a concern to voters across party lines, but not understanding what that meant. That their view was not going to be the view of those people that had a different letter behind their name in their registration. I think you're right there.
Well, and they couldn't see it from the other perspective, like you just talked about. So the New Republic, in blaming white women for Kamala Harris election, right?
I was like, wow, okay.
A recent Time Siena showed that the majority of white women, like the white male counterparts, saw inflation in the economy as their top voting issue. Abortion was second, immigration was third. To be sure, there was a notable age split here, with Gen Z women only went 36% for Trump. Women aged 30 to 44 went 41% for Trump. Women aged 45 to 64 went 48% for Trump. And women over 65 backed the former president 45%. So the gender gap wasn't really there, but there was one demographic that isn't really being talked a lot about, but is actually what I think could be a real big signal to the direction of particular states and the future of some of these elections. Okay. So you heard all about the gender gap and how men are supporting Donald Trump in big numbers, and all the women were going to go vote for Kamala Harris. Well, it wasn't the case. 52% of white women went over and voted for Donald Trump. So is it the gender gap, or is there a different gap? Here's one that comes from Brad Wilcox, a noted researcher from the University of Virginia. He's been on the show before.
Yeah, just a sec, because I want to just address for a second that idea of the women in breaking, because we talked about on the air, and I was looking at this going, I'm seeing this break, and I was seeing it in polls, and I spent some time, and probably not going to get, I don't want to get too in the weeds right now, looking at numbers, etc., because I was surprised how it did not happen that way. And so I spent time going, okay, this is what I saw beforehand. This is what happened now. What did I get wrong? What was I seeing that I was incorrect on? I was challenging my own conclusions yesterday on, I saw this happening. Why wasn't the trend there? And you're absolutely right that what they saw in the gender gap that looked like it was going to perpetuate what happened in 2022 and before didn't happen this time. So yeah, tell us what Brad says about this.
It's marriage.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the states that are more fertile. So what they did is they overlaid voting trends with state-based fertility. And this was a survey that came out recently that showcased red states are more fertile. They're just building families. Blue states are not building families. And in fact, Colorado was lower on the list of that. So while it's interesting that, yeah, there was a bit of a gender gap, what some of these folks are saying is that the partisan gap around families is actually continuing to intensify. And this helps explain why Trump nearly won New Jersey, because New Jersey is actually kind of growing in some of their fertility rates. They went back and looked at 2020 to look at the correlation between party affiliation and family orientation. And they've noticed that it's just getting stronger. So Republicans, family builders, Democrats tend to be more single. And that is actually explains some of the divide. So think of this. Instead of thinking gender gap, think married families supporting Republicans, okay? Then singles tending to support Democrats, but single men that Trump went after with like the wrestling, the fighting, the Hulk Hogan, Dana White, all that stuff came over. So you lock down. So don't think gender, think family relationships. Okay, the families are going to support Republicans. Then let's come up with a campaign strategy that breaks apart the singles block and brings single men over. We'll let Kamala Harris have single women, and the math just works in our direction.
Yeah, I think that Brad may be drawing a conclusion that's not there. I think there is a correlation, but I'm not sure there's a causation. And I didn't want to use that so frequently in a row. But I think there is some trends that you can look at that way. But if the thing that I have a hard time wrapping my head around that is, if this is about building the core family, if this is about the family values and building that, then why would we choose Trump as the scion? Why would you choose him as a standard bearer? Because that's not what he's about. That's not his behavior. So I look at it as they made this choice in spite of. And that's part of what I spent my time yesterday.
You're looking at personality, not policy, though.
Yeah,
And
so that's what I'm looking at. And I agree with that. And then what I saw was that in my dive yesterday and looking at different demographics, what I saw was things broke on policy in certain directions a lot more than personality. And I was assuming in some demographics that some of the personality things would weigh over, and it didn't at all. That basically a lot of people put their economic situation, their issue about immigration, above any sort of personality, any sort of other issues, which in my mind is going to be a problem going forward for the GOP. Because in my lifetime, the GOP has been about culture, has been about family, and has been about values. But in this, it seems like a very utilitarian choice, that we need this to happen. So we are going to make the utilitarian choice to get what we need. And I think that's going to hurt the messaging later on. I don't think it's going to reinforce the values they think it does.
So that's a fair analysis. And look, I'm not going to defend Donald Trump's personal life in everything that he's done. But there was an article a few weeks ago, months ago, I think we covered it, or at least we were going to cover it on our show, about why families were leaving states like Illinois, New York, California, when they have what should be generous family policies, like paid family leave and those types of things, right? And red states don't have those. But families are moving to red states in spite of that. So why is that happening? And a lot of it comes down to the feeling that your family's under attack. So with values issues, school choice issues, religious issues. And so can a paid family leave policy structure put together by a blue state overcome the general feeling that the state and progressives in that state are attacking my family values? No. So they're heading to Florida, they're heading to Texas, they're heading to Oklahoma, where they can live freely the way they want to. It's the same position that single people want to move to Colorado or Illinois or California. Yeah. I want to be able to live the life I want to live, and conservative states won't allow me to do that. So if it's about family structure, feeling attacked, feeling like, that's what the progressives are doing against families, neither policy nor personality is necessarily going to cover that from the left's perspective.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's a great point. And what I'm looking at is the idea of those people that are fleeing the blue states and going to the red states, as you said, are making the choice based on values.
Yes.
And that's what I found interesting in this election, is the choice wasn't necessarily made on values. Because if we would
regards to personality.
Well, yeah, but again, who the candidate is based on the values. So if we would put a white sheet together, take the names off the top and talk about behaviors and what has happened, most of the people that say they look at family values and what they want as the traditional American family would lean closer to Kamala than they would to Trump. But despite that, they made the choice for Trump. And that's what I think is interesting.
And it gets to hostility.
Yeah.
It gets to hostility. You're not wrong, but it comes down to hostility towards family values. And then you have to be honest. If you're going to critique Donald Trump about some of his choices, you also have to look at his family structure and go, he generally has a pretty solid family. His kids love him. His grandchildren love him. They don't have all this division. He seems to have built a pretty strong family.
I don't know about that. The ex-wives don't necessarily feel that way.
Yeah, but the kids and grandchildren.
I know that, but it's not
so if you're going to look at one aspect, you got to be fair to the other aspect.
Oh, yeah, I understand. But that's what's interesting about it, is the people that say that these states are not reflecting my values pick up and move to an end to a state and then make a choice in election for a person that doesn't represent their values and doesn't because it's utilitarian.
I think represent is a broad word there.
Okay, that's fair. Because I think a lot of this backlash, and unfortunately goes back a little bit to last hour, is I think there was, for many voters, a utilitarian choice on one side or the other. And I feel that there's a group of Donald Trump supporters that are kind of like, okay, the country sucks. I need things to change. And the only way we can change is with a strong person, because I see all these other things. And we need some sort of a strong, aggressive leader to, as you said, take a hammer to the systems in order to break these things down. And this is my own opinion. And if the people that I don't like get screwed with in the process, good. Because I don't like them anyway. So I get what I want, and I also get to feed my feelings. And I think that was a very utilitarian choice. And I think Democrats and liberals make that choice at a different angle many times as well, and get the same results. Where if the conservatives, if the very religious that I don't like get screwed with, good, I will make that liberal choice. I think that was part of this election, that it was about a strength in who we wanted, a change that we wanted. And if the people that I dislike get screwed with, good.
Well, let's talk about how the ladies from The View looked at it, particularly in that notion of the country being in a funk. This is where
the electorate.
No, go ahead. This is where I think they got the closest, Bill.
It was interesting. The electorate overall, even though the country's been diversifying for decades, the voting public actually got a little bit whiter. Because a lot of voters of color decided not to show up. They didn't think there was anything in their interest to do it. And look, people can vote on anything they want. They can vote because they like the color of someone's hat, or because of reproductive rights, or because of the economy. Any of those things can play in. And if you looked at this election purely through the lens of what's the economic situation in the country, you would have said there's no way the incumbent party can win. If you looked at it purely from the personal attributes of the candidates, you say there's no way that Donald Trump can win. Right. But people make these judgments, and they make it in complex ways. And sometimes people vote against their own self-interest in some narrow areas, or even some broad areas, just because. And this is just a country that is in a kind of a funk, very angry in some ways, divided in some ways, I think united in other ways. And I think this was actually a moment of remarkable unity at the end of the day, in terms of how an election can speak. This was a statement.
So I appreciate the honesty from him. He's the Washington, D.C. bureau chief and chief election analyst for ABC News on The View yesterday, talking about most people feel that the country's in a funk and that this was a united statement against that. And when the ladies from The View run off on cultural resentment, racism, those types of things, they're missing. And this is why Kamala Harris missed it too. Even the democracy is our chief thing. The culture's in the America's in a funk. A lot of it is rooted almost entirely. I want to say that statement again. Most of it, not all of it, but most of it's rooted in economic issues, and the failure to address that and take it seriously was the result of the election you saw on Tuesday night. That was a strong statement.
Yeah, that was.
So, and I appreciate the honesty around that on The View.
Yeah, and there's a part of it where they have a conversation and they go a little bit deeper into it, and they're 110% right, where Kamala's campaign heard about the pain points the average American was feeling and then told them, no, it's not that bad. No, you have to understand.
That's right.
I struggled with that here on the air when we would talk about the economy, where, again, it is a fact that the fundamentals of the American economy are strong. It is also a fact that you going to the store, everything's more expensive and it's harder to pay for things. Both things can be true at the same time. And unfortunately, the Harris campaign didn't acknowledge both. They kept trying to assuage people and say, no, you're not feeling what's really good. That doesn't help. Coming up to somebody and saying, that's only a little bit of fire on your arm, doesn't help when you're saying, all those people over there are burning. That doesn't help you at all about your personal pain. And I even outlined it with Peter Boyle's election night and on the air with Ted Trimpa, that one of the huge mistakes the Harris campaign made was not highlighting the economic policy of Donald Trump. And one of those would be the debate. When Donald Trump starts talking about tariffs, she should have, in her next answer, gone, wait, we got to go back to this. You just heard him on how he is going to solve the problem, but his answer is this and this and this, and it's going to make things more expensive for you, because at the core, and this is why it should have done, and this is why I would have told her you have to do it. He doesn't understand how tariffs work. He was there for 4 years and has no idea. As soon as you insult Donald Trump as non-intelligent, he's going to have to respond. He's a counterpuncher. And what you're going to get is you're going to get the same thing when he was at the economic forum in Chicago, where he turns around to the economist and says, you don't understand tariffs. And then words fall out of his mouth that are completely and totally incorrect. And that's what they should have done. And then that becomes an ad. And then they reinforce over and over again the economic policies. And that was what I was talking about, is the economic policies of Trump are, if he follows through on what he has said, are going to make things more expensive. But they never bothered to make that case because they were afraid of acknowledging things are difficult with their own economy.
Yep.
And not acknowledging their own problems and mistakes was a huge mistake.
It is amazing that politicians have that problem.
Again, it cost her. And I'm going through the numbers yesterday, and I'm shocked on the number of people who just decided, I understand that he can be a bad person. I understand he did these things I don't like. I get it. But the economy sucks. It's hard for me to put gas in my car. It's harder for me to pay rent. It's harder for me to put food on the table. So I just need a change.
It's the mindset of you have a health problem, so you're going to go in, and who's the surgeon that you hire?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really care if he's a nice guy or not. I want the best guy to do the job. And if it's a decision between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, it was pretty clear. Let's go to the phone lines. Mary, Wyoming. Good morning, Mary. You're on the Jeff and Bill show.
Hey, Mary.
Hey, good morning. I called in regarding the View comments about the culture thing.
Yeah,
and
go
I
ahead.
keep saying from the very beginning, when Trump first came down that elevator, I, as a personality, didn't like. However, it's always been about policy. And the policy isn't just the economy. It is also the border, the open border. People are recognizing it, and I'm going to make a little left side to say, it's also, I really wanted to address the issue about, I hope one day your conversation will have a real thing about tariffs. I don't think that you are right, Billy, on this issue about tariffs. Tariffs also brought back manufacturing and jobs back to this country. Yes, we have to pay more. I understand that, but it also allows the average person to start getting paid a living wage.
But
and I hope that there's going to be a conversation about that.
I do, and I'm trying to have it. See, the thing is that, okay, so we acknowledge, Mary, that the tariff is paid by the importer. So when Donald Trump puts a tariff on goods, it's going to make the stuff that we bring into the country more expensive, and that is a cost that is going to be passed on to the consumer, correct? We can agree on that.
We can agree on that.
Okay, good. Now,
but we also, but he's putting the tariffs on the manufacturers that have taken that to those third world countries, and we're able to buy cheaply, and that we were able to do it cheaply. But however,
here's the thing, though, Mary. I understand what he's doing, and one of the things is that because he doesn't understand tariffs, isn't going to be able to create the siloed tariffs that you're talking about. In a specific area, a siloed tariff can be very effective, but it has to be surgical. And what it has to do is you have to identify that particular good, and you have to make it more expensive when it's being imported. And the other thing you have to do is make sure that it's benefiting the local manufacturer that is American. The other problem in the tariff is you can't hike it too high. And the example I'm going to give you is the 2020 tariffs that he put on steel. He hiked the Chinese steel tariff very, very high. American steel manufacturers, you know what they did? They immediately raised their price to just under what the Chinese steel was. They took profits on top of it. So they artificially increased their price for American consumers because they knew they could get more because their stuff was still cheaper. That's a problem if you don't understand strategic tariffs.
Then we address that.
I know, but
address that.
I know,
but we
Mary,
bring the jobs back so we can have for the American people.
But hang on a sec. Here's the other part, though, is you're expecting a person who doesn't understand it in the first place to then address it. That's where I disagree. He doesn't understand the basis. I don't expect him to be able to recognize it nor fix it because he doesn't understand the premise. And that's the issue I have. And the other problem with the manufacturing...
Unfortunately, he didn't have a team that supported, and you and I both would have to agree that he never had the kind of staff. Excuse me.
But Mary,
when he went into office, he took the advice from the Republican Party on who to bring in key positions. That's what other presidents have done, because he wasn't in the system, and they screwed him.
Mary, from the time in which he became president in 2016 until 2024, when he's running for president again, what prevented him from learning about tariffs and how to implement them? That's not his staff. That is his lack of curiosity and lack of understanding. He didn't care.
His financial advisor should.
Hang on. He doesn't care because he thinks he's right. He told the person at the Economic Forum of Chicago that he was wrong about tariffs. He told the economist that was explaining to him in economics 101 terms what happens. And Trump's like, nope, you're wrong. Trump was wrong 110%, but he didn't understand that. And that's the problem I've got. And with the manufacturing, I understand the manufacturing. We got to have a little bit of a space here because this is going to be a touch long, not horrible. But the manufacturing jobs, Biden did keep some of the tariffs on, but the manufacturing jobs have grown larger under Biden than it did under Trump. And there were segments of the economy.
Guess who brought him over?
But it's not.
Guess who brought those companies over that Biden could do it? He never. You'll never give him credit for any of the things that he does.
The companies that came over were based on tax cuts that were given to them, not based on the tariffs.
Right. You're right.
I know, but the tax cuts were given by
too.
No, but the tax cuts. They were tax cuts under Biden.
Come, he would hijack their percentage of what it would cost them.
Yeah, no, but that's
he did too.
No, but that didn't bring the manufacturing jobs back. We did not see we saw a larger growth of manufacturing jobs under Biden than we did under Trump. And I understand that. Now, the other part is this. Here's the problem that Donald Trump doesn't understand. Let's say that you make a component that is used in the assembly of bike chains, okay? And that is a component that has to be imported by an American bike manufacturer. Now, that bike chain component has become more expensive. And so now what is going to happen with you as a company having to import that? You have to make a choice on the number of bikes that you're going to make or on the price that you have that you're going to have to put that price on. Then what's going to happen, though, is that manufacturer that's outside of the country, there are a whole lot of other countries that are making bikes. Donald Trump believes that in some ways we're the only market. And that's part of his myopathy that makes his tariffs dangerous, because that person, your company that makes the pieces for the bike chain, can go and sell to every other bicycle manufacturer around the world. Now, those bikes can be imported here into the U.S., but they will be more expensive. But the bottom line is the tariff that Donald Trump put on that bike chain component. You don't have to come into the country to manufacture it because you're still making money. It doesn't matter to you whether or not the American bike chain market is buying it or not, because when the Americans stop buying it, the market will absorb some of that. That's an opportunity for someone else to be able to buy more and make their bikes less expensive. So what happens at the end?
And I say along with that, you have Buy America First.
But it's still
along with those manufacturers coming in, buy the bicycle from America first before going overseas on everything.
But it's going to be more expensive, and that's the issue.
I understand that. Okay, but also we would be making more money at living wage.
Hang on, Mary, though. But isn't the issue right now the fact that stuff is too expensive, and that Donald Trump's then economic policies are going to make them more expensive? That's what I've been shouting from the rooftops for the last 6 months.
The problem is that we don't have living wages.
Hold on. I want to stop.
That's a minimum wage. That's a minimum wage.
I want to ask a really simple question real quick.
Yeah.
Donald Trump says he loves tariffs. He says that they're the most beautiful word, even better than love.
Yeah.
Why does Donald Trump love tariffs?
Because he doesn't understand them.
You think that's the case?
Oh, absolutely.
So I think it's a little different.
Yeah.
If you've ever read the book, The Art of the Deal, Donald Trump's mission in life, his gifting on loan from God, as another radio host would say, is negotiations. He loves it. It is the way he thinks about the world. It is how he approaches his personal relationships. It is the title of the book, The Art of the Deal. He is all about deals, negotiations. Tariffs become, for Donald Trump, a massive tool in a whole host of negotiations with particular countries on how much aid we're going to give them, how much they're going to pay us to reduce the trade deficit, even possible to avoid war. He sees them as a negotiating technique rather than just simply an economic aspect.
No, he doesn't. And you're reading a lot into that. And what we can do is we can take his own.
But that's why he loves them.
No, not at all. We can take his own words.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you're ascribing these beliefs to him that is not anything he's ever enumerated. He's ever talked about them that way. If we go back to his own words, he talks about with tariffs, and Mary has heard this, that he talks about how much money we took in from other countries. China giving us billions of dollars. And
so it's a negotiation tool.
Hang on a second. No. You're not letting me get to the end of this. He's talking about the idea of China sending us billions of dollars because of the tariffs. They paid us billions of dollars. He even, during a podcast episode, floated the idea of replacing our federal income tax with just tariffs, pure tariffs on all, because he thinks the other countries would be paying instead of the American worker paying federal income tax. That's what he said. His view is not a negotiation tactic. His view is not necessarily to make it better for the American workers. He thinks he's taking money from other countries. That's why he loves them. But he's wrong. That's why he loves them, is because he feels he's found a way to get funding from another country. He's wrong about that. And that's the danger in this entire economic policy.
If tariffs were only tied, for instance, to economics, I think it's much bigger in the way he thinks about how countries interact with each other.
But he never says that. He always brags about the money he takes in from other countries, and
I think that's one
wrong.
aspect of it.
But hang on. But the money, he always brags about the money he takes in from other countries. He's wrong about that. He's completely and totally wrong. That should be, and so any other conclusion he comes to, we also should be able to question that as far as how he thinks the economic policy should work and what he can do with them. If he doesn't understand the basic economics 101 of how a tariff works, that is a dangerous person to be putting in charge.
It's just kind of crazy that you think Donald Trump doesn't understand basic economics 101.
He comes out and says it publicly. It's not me. I'm listening to the words that come out of his mouth and how he describes them. And he's wrong about them. And he says it over and over and over again. This is not something that I have pulled out of the ether. This is something that he proudly declares over and over again, that this is how tariffs work. And he's wrong.
Well, we'll have to see. I disagree with you, Bill. When I look at, and this goes back to the caller and what Ross Perot said, that giant sucking sound of jobs leaving America, heading to Mexico with NAFTA, all that stuff. I think there's a really strong argument there that countries have developed a tremendous amount of wealth under the idea of free trade that should be here in America. And I'm glad to see Donald Trump step up, and I'm interested to see it. Mary, I appreciate your call. Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
We'll continue with your calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
Florida, Nebraska, and South Dakota are the first states to shut down measures to enshrine abortion on their state constitutions since Roe v. Wade was overturned and the power to decide was given back to the states. By rejecting adding abortion rights to their state constitution, Florida voters kept a ban on abortion after the first 6 weeks of pregnancy in place. It's the first time abortion rights groups have lost in a statewide ballot question since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe. Arizona, Colorado, Colorado, Maryland, Montana, and Nevada voters adopted such measures, and New Yorkers passed an amendment to ban discrimination on the basis of pregnancy outcomes. Nevada voters also approved an amendment, but they'll need to pass it again in 2026 for it to take effect. Bitcoin spikes to a record high as traders expect President Trump's victory to boost cryptocurrencies, jumping nearly 8% to a record 75,345 in early trading on Wednesday before falling back a bit. Jeremy House reports.
Mr. Trump has taken a favorable view of cryptocurrencies. He has pledged to make America, quote, the crypto capital of the planet and create a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. Ahead of the election, Mr. Trump also launched a new venture to trade cryptocurrencies called World Liberty Financial.
Former federal prosecutor Nathan Hochman has won election as the Los Angeles County District Attorney. He defeated George Gascon.
In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
A Keurig K-Supreme Plus Smart Serve coffee maker valued at $200. Get it now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
back to the Jeff and Bill show. A conversation about the elections has now run into tariffs, which I imagine is going to be happening a lot. So go read up on the tariffs because you got to be ready for it. My point being that Donald Trump uses tariffs as a negotiation tactic. He loves deals, and this gives him the power of the greatest economy in the world to negotiate deals. I'll give you an example. On the evening of June 7th, I don't know the year, this comes from a Wikipedia article about Trump's tariffs. Trump announced that the planned Mexico tariffs were, quote, indefinitely suspended after Mexico agreed to take stronger measures to curb immigration across the border of the U.S. According to the deal, Mexico agreed to deploy 6,000 of its National Guard troops throughout the country with a focus on its southern border with Guatemala. So I don't think Trump sees tariffs the same way as having the impact minimum wage does. I think he uses them as a negotiation technique, knowing that America is the strongest economy in the world, to be able to force companies to do, not just companies, but countries, force countries with profitable companies in them to do the bidding of the United States. I think that's why he likes them.
Why do we want to replace federal income tax with them then, if that is the issue, if it's a negotiating tactic?
Because he thinks our economy is so big and that countries want them access to our consumers so much that he can offload the tax burden upon the American people and give them to these companies and countries that want access to our economy.
Yeah, but that's not who pays the tariff. That's the problem. That is the fundamental problem of it, is that's not who pays the tariff. So that's why he gets it wrong. He could be using it as a negotiation tactic, sure, but his understanding of that.
Yeah, and you're saying that the importer is the only person that pays it.
Yeah,
but I'm saying that the importers could offset those costs to the consumer, but that's only going to work maybe until there's a second competitor that can do it lower. So they're going to end up having to go back to the original companies in the countries to pay for it.
The one thing we know that companies and corporations in America do is absorb the extra cost and not pass it on to the consumer. They're always worried about that. No.
Well, let's get to the phone line. Sam, Westminster. Good morning, Sam. You're on the Jeff and Bill show.
Hey, good morning, guys. Billy, the fatal flaw in your argument is that you assume that those consumers have to buy those goods. There's competition out there. So if you raise tariffs and all of a sudden the price of that good goes up, you're going to jump over to another good. And then the company in the foreign country, they are going to suffer. And, Jeff, you brought up a good point about the Mexico. I was going to bring that up too. When Trump threatened them with tariffs, they jumped. They did not want any part of that. And
Sam?
That's every country has tariffs and they work. And so, Billy, the way, for you to say Trump doesn't understand tariffs and insist that you're right is beyond arrogant. To say he's ignorant to that is beyond arrogant. It's frustrating that you think you know everything.
No, it's not. Sam, I'm not saying that I know everything. I've never used that as a premise.
Well, then say I.
Sam, hang on. I am judging Donald Trump based on the words coming out of his mouth. He says all the billions of dollars that we took in from China thanks to my tariffs. That is not me saying what Trump thinks. That's what he says. He has said we can replace the federal income tax system with tariffs because we're taking in the money from the other countries. He's wrong about that. He's completely wrong about it. This is not me making a judgment. I'm only using the words that have come out of his mouth. And if I'm not supposed to judge the words coming out of his mouth, you got to explain to me how I'm supposed to interpret him. The other part, though, Sam,
by his actions.
Sam,
by his actions.
Sam, and his actions. It's okay, fine, but that's going to get you into a whole nother problem here. But what happened to steel prices?
You
in
guys
the US?
Listen too much on his words. He babbles.
Yeah, explain to me. Would you make that same argument when Joe Biden was running? Would you say we're listening too much to Joe Biden's fumbly words? We have to really understand what he means. No, you wouldn't make that choice.
No, I would. No,
but you make it. I know, but you don't. No, Sam, though.
We're up against the break, guys. We got to run on against this. We're so far over time.
Yeah, we are. But what happened to his steel prices when Donald Trump raised the tariffs to American steel prices? American steel prices went up to get to the exact same point. The idea that Sam says that it's going to make lower prices for America is not true. It's going to raise prices across the board.
We got to go to a break. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Our conversation has gone from why Kamala Harris lost to Donald Trump's plan on tariffs. I do recommend starting to read up on tariffs because it's going to be a big part of his economic plan, and we'll see how good it works. Let's go to John Lakewood. Good morning, John.
Hey, morning.
Good morning. You've got a good show. I was listening to Mary from Wyoming, and I think I heard her talk before. But there was a generation where it was a big deal. People would be glad to pay for items that were made in the United States.
John,
and Peter Boyles will comment on that.
You are exactly right, John. In fact, we don't even have to go too far back. If we go to, I would say, God, my brain, is it mid-90s? Yeah, it would have been mid-90s, I believe. Maybe earlier 90s with Walmart. You remember when Walmart became the huge big discounter, what was their phrase? They were selling stuff that was made in America. It was American-made stuff. That was where when they were first taking over across the country, that was one of their first big marketing slogans, was the fact that these were American products that you were going to be able to get cheaply and you could support American businesses. Yeah, you're absolutely right, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I was raised on a farm back in the 50s. I'm an old guy. But even farmers would talk about, that them cheap tools,
Yes.
Better off to pay a few more bucks and get something made in America. It was a big deal.
Oh, yeah. And the idea of going out and you buy the Caterpillar, you buy the John Deere. You don't need to go buy the Makita. That's not what you buy. You don't buy that silly stuff that's coming out of Asia. Absolutely, man. That's exactly where it came from.
Well, here's the question I got. There's a lot of evidence that the Chinese government is subsidizing Chinese businesses.
Oh, sure.
It's lowering the costs of Americans to buy those products as a result of it. So for the sake of not just American consumerism, but American jobs, how do you expect the United States to compete with that?
Depends on whether or not you.
Well, you probably have to pay a little more.
I'd have to pay a little bit more, Bill.
John, yeah, but that's the reason that we didn't want to have someone else in the office. We wanted to change the horses right now because of high prices, and that Trump promised to make them cheaper. But yet,
we'll have to see.
Yet,
I didn't hear an answer. Give me a call. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
I don't want to ever hear that cackle again. It's like today, the last one this week, maybe. Good morning. It's 8 a.m. in the Mile High City, and you've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You really did wake up in the greatest country in history. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. We're gearing up for a whole nother hour of engaging discussions, critical analysis, but most importantly, your calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson. We'll get to the phone lines, and then Kristi Burton Brown's going to join us, Executive Vice President of Advanced Colorado, talk about what happened with Amendment 80. But first, news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. 25 and snow in Denver, expecting a high of 39 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, President-elect Trump is putting together a transition team before his inauguration on January 20th. He'll have to fill around 4,000 government positions, including 1,200 that require Senate approval. That should be easier with the Senate now also under Republican control. President Biden will address the nation from the White House this morning. Biden spoke with Trump on Wednesday and congratulated him on his election victory and added, "I was a much stronger candidate than her." Well, that didn't actually happen. I'm just guessing. Sorry. The Justice Department is evaluating how to wind down Trump's criminal cases that were ginned up by weaponizing the justice system and going after political opponents. And there's a policy that a sitting president can't be prosecuted. The cases center around his actions leading up to the J6 Capitol riot and his handling of classified documents. Basically, the leftist globalists did whatever they could to try and destroy him before the election. That didn't happen. The Federal Reserve wraps up a 2-day meeting today with a highly anticipated announcement on interest rates. Most analysts predict the central bank will cut rates by a quarter point or 25 basis points. The first lowering of rates in 4 years. The opening bell rings this morning after stocks closed sharply higher on Wednesday following DJT's victory. A winter storm watch for the Denver area will go into effect tonight. Douglas County does not have school today because of icy roads. A Colorado officer killed in the line of duty last night. Golden Police Chief Joe Harvey shared the news with tears in his eyes that the 33-year-old officer was hit and killed while investigating a crash on Highway 58.
Obviously, this is a very difficult situation, and particularly for a city like Golden, but more broadly for the law enforcement family.
Chief Harvey says that 2 officers were run over by a suspected drunk driver. Both got trapped underneath the car, and only one survived with serious injuries. The victim's wife asked that his name not be released. The driver who struck the officers was taken into custody. Multiple law enforcement agencies in the area lined up with lights flashing in a procession for the officer as the highway was shut down for nearly 4 miles.
He's an amazing human being. He has had a long, stellar career in the military, where he flew Black Hawk helicopters and served as a commander. He will be survived by a wonderful wife, a sister, and parents.
The race for the 8th District congressional seat is still too close to call. More than a day after polls closed in Colorado, election returns from last night showed Republican Gabe Evans narrowing the lead of Democratic Congresswoman Yadiro Caraveo to about 2,400 votes. Meanwhile, Democratic congressional candidate Adam Frisch conceded his race to Republican Jeff Hurd in the 3rd congressional district. Hurd replacing Republican Lauren Boebert, who won her 4th district race, of course. Sonny Hostin on The View after the election. Well, my computer just crashed, so we're not going to be able to hear that, fortunately or unfortunately. Nuggets beat the Thunder last night. Avs take on the Jets tonight, 23 in Brighton, 24 in Littleton, 25 in Denver. Be careful driving this morning. Jeff and Bill continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The same storm that brought us the snow yesterday is going to come back for a repeat performance. Mostly cloudy, redeveloping light snow as the day wears on. Temperatures in the low to mid-30s. Snow showers tonight, lows mid-20s. Snow becoming likely again Friday, and snow likely Friday night into early Saturday, with additional accumulations likely. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're going to get to Kristi Burton Brown here in a second, but we've gotten a lot of text messages asking about Tony from Littleton. How's Tony doing after the election? And he's called in. Good morning, Tony.
Hey, morning.
Doing well. I'm calling about the to talk quickly about tariffs and see if we can all get on the same page. But real quick on the note about the 1/4 point drop, that's not the first in 4 years. The Fed dropped a 1/4 point in the last meeting 6 weeks ago. So just a correction on that. This will be the second drop since they began the increase. So let's talk about the tariffs. I'm pretty convinced that Trump, in saying he's taken the position he's going to put 60% tariffs on China and 20% tariffs on everybody else, Europe, Canada, Mexico. I think that's kind of like Mexico's going to pay for the wall. He doesn't really mean it. I don't think he really means it. But maybe he means it. If he does, I am confident, even if he has a bunch of yes men around him, which he's committed to doing, one of those guys has taken Econ 101, and they will stop him and say that we just can't do this. We've done this one other time, at least one other time. It was during the late 20s, and Hoover did basically the same thing and caused a worldwide recession/depression. So here's kind of why it doesn't work. And so let's talk about the logistics. So Trump put a tariff on steel coming in from China. So then and how does that work? Our U.S. Customs collects the 20% tariff from the manufacturer, from the company that is importing the steel. So the company pays customs the 20%, and then customs passes that money off to the U.S. Treasury. So China, in response, they put a 20% tariff on, I think it was soybeans. It was an agricultural product coming out of the U.S. They put a 20% tariff on our exporters of soybeans. Well, then the Chinese people on the other end receiving it's like, we can't afford those. So they bought their soybeans from South America. Our farmers lost that business. We are now still paying those farmers. We're giving them money for their lost business to China because of the tariff we put on the steel. So that's how it works. That's just mechanically how it works.
Tony, help me, though, answer this question I raised to Billy right before. You've got the Chinese corrupt their government subsidizing their companies in order to drive prices down lower. What's your response to that? What would you do?
Okay, all right. Now, and that happens. That happens. And so, but let's, and I'll come to that. I'll answer that. But now, if you put a 60% tariff on everything, now think about the whole idea. How does this cost American consumers more money? So let's say you put it on everything, and there's a rubber hose that's needed in a car that GM makes. then they have to pay that extra 60% for that hose. And because there is no manufacturer in the United States that makes that hose, so they have no choice but buy it at that 60% higher price. And then they try to absorb it if they can. For the most part, they can't. So then they pass that on to the American consumer. That's why some people call it a tax, because most of it ends up being.
Tony, we've got to run here, but look, I've come to see that Donald Trump is a guy that likes to take existing systems, challenge them directly, find new ways. Look what he did to the Bush dynasty, the Clinton dynasty, the Obama dynasty, Mitt Romney, the entire Republican Party. He sees things differently. I'm willing to give him some space to try to push this agenda.
I'm
because
betting it will never happen. It would crash the economy.
Look, the Chinese and other countries like that are gaming the system around free trade, and it's harming jobs here.
Let me get real quick.
Tony, I've got to run. I've just got to run.
Yeah, so
we've got to get to some other conversations.
And you are right about the Chinese subsidizing their companies in order to make some things more competitive. But realize then when Trump got in the trade war, he created, as Tony has properly points out, created the soybean market. So now we are subsidizing the soybean market here. So it's not as if. So what happens is, because of the tariff war, we were mad that China was doing X, Y, and Z. We now are subsidizing the industry as well. We're writing the same checks, the same thing we complain about China for doing. So I'm saying is, when you get to the idea of the goal may not be actually what you envision. It doesn't necessarily mean more manufacturing, more of this here. And then once you change supply chains, it's very difficult to change them back.
What I'm hearing, and I'm not a big tariffs guy, but what I'm hearing from the other side is, if we change anything from this free trade system that we've set up, it's all going to get more expensive and everything's going to be terrible. Meanwhile, if you just go down to the border, which I've seen, all these manufacturers just right on the border of Mexico, and then they bring all those materials into the United States. Meanwhile, we don't have the jobs, we don't have the manufacturing, and we're terrified of a trade war with China. I want to see what Donald Trump can do. All right. I want to pivot here to Amendment 80, because this was a big one. We had everybody on the show debating Amendment 80. It failed 51-48. It didn't reach the 55% necessary. This would have created a constitutional right to school choice for children in kindergarten through 12. The authors of this was Advanced Colorado, and to not only give us analysis on this, but some of the other propositions they were pushing, including Proposition 130, is Kristi Burton Brown from Advanced Colorado. Good morning, Kristi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to talk to you guys again.
Well, congratulations on your personal win. You'll be joining the Colorado State Board of Education, which is absolutely fantastic. But let's dive into some of these amendments and propositions that you all were pushing from Advanced Colorado. Give us your read on what happened election night.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's do that. So first of all, I think our two other measures, 128 and 130, the safety measures, definitely passed here in Colorado. 128, truth in sentencing, passed overwhelmingly. And I think also Amendment I, which was pushed by the legislature onto the ballot and took away bail exceptions for first-degree murderers, also passed overwhelmingly. And I think when you look at those three measures, you can see that voters in Colorado really want to take action on public safety, even though the legislature hasn't been willing to do it. Truth in sentencing, the one that it was 128, and it was actually the most popular citizen-initiated ballot measure this year. That was run through the legislature at least 2 years in a row and struck down on a party line basis in committee. So you see time and again the legislature like, we don't want to deal with public safety. And when voters have the chance to do it, they say, well, we do. We care about the fact that Colorado's, the third most dangerous state in the nation, according to U.S. News and World Report. And so I think there's very much a path for Advanced Colorado and conservatives in Colorado to continue to push public safety ballot measures and get them passed.
That is great news. You saw the election of George Brockler as well. I was joking with George yesterday on the show that it's kind of like the Tombstone guys. They're back in town. They're taking on the bad guys and they're going to clean house. And you got that with George Brockler. You got it with Proposition 130 and the training of peace officers and the amount of money that's going to go towards that. So do you think we're going to see a change in the safety that people face here in Colorado?
I do, because if you just look at the numbers, when you look at violent crime in Colorado, and that's what our truth in sentencing measure addressed. Incidentally, California had a ballot measure that they also passed that dealt with truth in sentencing on a much lower level. Like they were talking about theft and more low-level crimes. Here in Colorado, we passed it on violent crimes like kidnapping, rape, murder. But when you look at the Department of Corrections statistics, you see that those people in Colorado right now get out after serving on average 46% of their sentence. This would require them to serve 85% if they're a repeat offender, 100%. And there's stories all over the news of people who've been getting out after serving less than half their sentence and doing really violent crimes in Colorado. So, the biggest example is a story in Aurora where the guy dressed up as an ICE agent would go to homes, abuse immigrant women and children. He got out, after serving only 8 years, and he had a 20-some-year sentence. Wow. 2 weeks later, reoffended, abused a 7-year-old Vietnamese girl. So things like that are going to stop happening in Colorado because those people are going to stay in jail instead of back out on the street offending.
So in light of the concern about safety and this being really a key issue, the quality of the economy, from your perspective as the former chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party as well, what is happening with Colorado? You had red swings just about everywhere, and then we're this island of blue, as Kyle Clark likes to say.
No, and it's true. And I was looking at some numbers this morning, and still, Kamala Harris got less votes in Colorado than Joe Biden did. So, and yet we're still, you're right, it's very solidly blue. I think CD8, that race isn't over yet. We held on to CD3, we held on to CD4, CD5. I think all the expected all the races went how they're expected to go. And that's where the problem in Colorado is we are stuck where we're stuck right now, unless something changes in the next few days in the 8th and Gabe Evans is able to pull that off in the last few votes. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. That would certainly be a surprise and a change for Republicans. But other than that, I think you see us kind of stuck. In the state Senate, thankfully, we were able to keep the current number of Republicans so the Democrats still will not have a supermajority, won't be able to amend the Constitution on their own. But it is discouraging when you live in Colorado and you're like, I wanted to make more gains than that. But I think what we do see a path forward, is on issues. Certainly on public safety. These are laws that the legislature is rejecting. The Democrats don't want to pass, but voters do. School choice, Amendment 80, you brought that up earlier. Obviously, we didn't win that one. And still a near majority of Coloradans wanted it. I think what happened is millions of dollars of out-of-state money from the National Teachers Union came in, lied to voters, told them it was a voucher when that's not what it is. And I relate it to the property tax battle, honestly. After Gallagher was repealed, some conservative groups put a property tax cut on the ballot in the next cycle, and it failed because voters, they weren't feeling the pain. They didn't see the spike in property taxes. And then, of course, that spike came, 30% increase in property taxes. And this year, people, it was the top of their minds. They wanted to deal with it. It's why we were able to negotiate the special session with the Democrats. And I think the same thing may happen on school choice. Right now, people aren't feeling the threats. They're not feeling the pain. When they do one day, I think that's when a measure like Amendment 80 can and will pass. So we just need to stay issue focused as conservatives in Colorado and continue to put issues in front of voters and pass what we can.
Talking with Kristi Burton Brown, she's Executive Vice President of Advanced Colorado, also newly elected to the State Board of Education. Let's talk that. You're now on the State Board of Education. What you going to do to shake things up there, Kristi?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll get sworn in January 8th. And what's really great for me, honestly, on the board and for conservatives as a whole is the CD8 race. Yasmin Navarro was also able, she has 7,000 votes ahead right now. So I think she's going to keep that lead. That's actually way more than
there's the same people voting, and Yasmin Navarro, who's a Republican, 7,000 votes ahead. Gabe Evans, 2,500 votes behind. It's bizarre.
Exactly. And it's because you often see a difference. You saw that in my race as well. Lauren Boebert won CD4 by 10 points. I won it by 19 or 20 points. So you do see a difference from the congressional races down to the State Board of Education because all the money is spent in the congressional races. Like the Republicans there have to combat the negative ads on TV. The Democrat attempts to paint them into a corner. Whereas I think often when people think of education, they actually want Republicans because they know we're the ones who fight for school choice. We're the ones that allow charter schools. We're the ones who don't want guys and girls bathrooms in schools. And so I think it's actually very interesting to see that unaffiliated voters in Colorado want Republicans in education seats, even more so than they may want Republicans in Congress. And so I think that seat was key. That's what I really wanted to win. CD4 usually goes Republican no matter who you are, but CD8 that's the seat we really needed, because with Yasmin winning and going to the Board of Ed, we will now have a pro-school choice majority on the State Board of Education.
Fantastic.
So 5-4 Democrats, but also 5-4 school choice, and that is
so you do have a Democrat. There's a Democrat on there that's pro-school choice, huh?
Yeah, it's the chairman of the board, actually, Rebecca McClellan, and CD6. Wow. I mean, not saying she would vote for every, I won't speak for her. I wouldn't say she'd vote for every charter school that the rest of us might vote for. But she does vote to approve some charter schools, which is very different than the Teachers Union Democrats.
Yeah, and that's important because we've been a founding family of a classical charter school that was kind of modeled after Hillsdale. So the kids are going to learn Latin. They're going to learn to love their country instead of hate their country, all that stuff. And they learn cursive and they say the Pledge of Allegiance. Right. They read Mark Twain, all that stuff, all good stuff. And but it's been a massive battle because if a local school board is progressive, pro-teacher union, they won't even give these schools a shot. They will shut them down, and then you have to appeal to statewide institutions in order to get your charter. And so you need a state board that can step in and say, no, you can't deny these schools just because you don't share their worldview, for instance,
Well, exactly, because you actually see that going on in Montrose right now. That's an interesting one for people to watch who care about charters getting approved. It's a good, solid, classical charter school being proposed. I mean, usually hundreds of kids are on these wait lists for these charter schools. Parents will want to be involved. They want the school, but they're having to battle the local school board right now that doesn't want to allow them in. I don't know what their final decision will be, but it's those kind of schools that, yes, that's what the state board is there for, is to say, hey, is there actually a legitimate reason to deny the school, or is it just because you don't like their worldview, or you just don't want another school in town? But all these parents do. And I think parents should have a greater say than school board members who just don't want competition.
Yeah. And these classical charter schools have huge wait lists because they're really good. There's no devices, they're actually diving into literature and mathematics and sciences and stuff like that. And they're not just handed an iPad and said, go spend 20 minutes in the corner, Johnny. Now, Kristi Burton Brown, Executive Vice President, Advance Colorado. I think we learned a big lesson in this election. I want to ask you, because you were the chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party, Pennsylvania seemed to be the model forward. And what I say about that is ground game engagement and operations. Romney did it a little bit, but he lost to Obama pretty handedly on that. Trump had the surprise win in 2016. Democrats mobilized big time, huge ground game operations in 2020, ballot harvesting, voter registration. And I think Republicans learn from that and go, this isn't just about an airwaves battle. It's not just about raising money. It is boots on the ground. It is thousands of poll watchers. It is legal ballot harvesting. It is voter registration 6, 9, 12 months before an election hitting the ground. Scott Pressler, Pennsylvania, proved that. Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, proved that. So could Colorado just turn around with a far more serious ground game than we currently have? I haven't seen anybody out doing voter registration from the Republican Party. I haven't seen ballot harvesting operations, door knocking operations. It seems like it's all left to the individual candidates to do with their friends and family, but a serious investment from conservatives into voter registration starting today in an effort to try to turn the election next year, 2 years from now. Do you think that would make a difference?
Jeff, I think that's a great question. Also, you're right on as far as what happened in Pennsylvania and other states like that. I think what's unique about Colorado is we already have one of the highest voter registrations in the country, in part because it's so easy to register to vote in Colorado. In fact, you're automatically registered when you get your driver's license, unless you don't want to be. So there's not whereas like in Pennsylvania, you have a huge Amish community actually who were largely not registered to vote. And that is something that was focused on there. And they went for President Trump in big margins. So you don't, you don't necessarily have a community like that in Colorado. It's worth diving into the numbers and seeing if there are a lot of, Hispanic citizens here in Colorado who aren't registered to vote, but could be. But as a whole in Colorado, we are a highly voter registered state. Ballot harvesting is also harder in Colorado because the law does say you can only turn in 10 ballots per person per election. And so, that a lot of states don't have that restriction that you do here in Colorado. So, is it worth diving into those numbers and seeing? I mean, Hispanic voters are coming to Republicans in huge numbers across the nation. We saw big shifts in Pueblo and Adams County this year. Like, as an example, on Amendment 80, the school choice measure passed in Adams County, passed in Pueblo County because Hispanic voters want those kind of conservative policies. It didn't pass in Douglas County, because you see people who are more, I'll just say, white, rich, educated, some Republicans, some Democrats, but are happy with their schools. And so they're not really interested in making sure the system is working for everyone else. Whereas when you're stuck in failing schools in Adams and Pueblo, you want those changes. You want school choice. So, there's a lot of work to do in Colorado. We're a very unique state, and we're difficult for Republicans because of the high percentage of white, educated, richer, more affluent, younger people. Those kind of states are difficult for Republicans. So I don't know. I think Colorado is different from Pennsylvania in those regards.
Kristi, Burton, Brown joining Jeff and Bill live. We're doing a recap of the Colorado ballot right now. And you'll recognize Kristi, Burton, Brown, former chairwoman of the Colorado GOP and current executive vice president of Advance Colorado and newly elected state educational board member. Congratulations. Now, Kristi, I want to kind of go for more the 10,000-foot view. You were getting there just a moment ago. And the question I have is, when you're looking at the electoral map, we have across the middle section of the U.S., these two little blue pools, Colorado and New Mexico. What is going on in Colorado that is not happening, or is it happening or not happening elsewhere? What I'm looking at is, and I'm asking this in a very bad idea, is why are we still blue when we have seen everyone around us trend red? What are we missing? What is Colorado getting wrong?
Well, I'd say they're missing a lot, getting a lot wrong. But I think sometimes, rather than looking at the geographic location of a state, which a lot of people do, you do have to look up the demographic makeup of the state. And the makeup of Colorado is far more similar actually to some of the East Coast states and to a state like Washington or Oregon, which are also, deeply blue. And if you just look at who lives here, what kind of people are they, Colorado's population is far more similar to states like that, rather than some of the other states around us. And so I think, even, we could even relate us to California in some ways, but California is just so diverse. So I think that's really our problem. It's a demographic problem. And it is, if we can convince more affluent, educated people to vote for Republicans instead of Democrats. That's the Democrats' biggest stronghold, is on voters like that. And Colorado's made up of voters like that. So until you do a cultural shift with people like that, it's going to be tough in Colorado. Thankfully, we do have a high Hispanic population in Colorado. And you see that population coming to Republicans, coming to our issues. It's just not the majority in Colorado right now.
Kristi Burton, I love that answer. Now, here's the thing: is if only you had some, maybe experience in talking about political strategy and how to message to demographics, that would really be helpful. I'm being tongue-in-cheek here, of course. What I'm asking is, when you outline that demographic that the GOP really needs to speak to, what do you think are the messages that will resonate the most with that demographic that could bend them back towards being a conservative voter? What would your recommendations be?
Yeah, I appreciate your kind words, but I would never claim, honestly, to have all of the answers and to know I don't think we know exactly yet, because we haven't been able to persuade that section of voters in really any state in a majority yet. And so I do think that's the next question the Republican Party needs to contend with. We have figured out how to appeal to working class voters, to more minority voters, which the Democrats had a stranglehold on for years. That has been a huge shift to the Republican Party. And so, that's the next level of saying, okay, how do we convince college educated, affluent people that Republican policies actually benefit all these, vulnerable populations that you claim to care about? Our policies benefit them far more. And so maybe it's messaging on that and saying, like, let's look at the issues, let's look at the policies we support and how they actually are benefiting the lives of all these people you claim to care about. These people you claim to care about are coming over and voting for Republicans. Why aren't you? Unfortunately, they have a lot of, I would say, honestly, hypocritical positions, but obviously they don't feel hypocritical to them. So how do you highlight to them that the policies of the Republican Party are benefiting these populations? You know, and I do think, unfortunately, someone like President Trump isn't going to be this kind of spokesperson who appeals to that group of voters. So it could be the next, you know, the next president that the Republicans choose, the next national spokesperson, so to speak, for our party may be able to reach those voters better.
Now, Kristi Burton Brown is very eloquent in her language. I'll be more blunt on the demographic issues. Colorado is the third highest college-educated community in the country, but only behind Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. And we're one of the lowest regular church attendance states in the nation. So it's a bunch of pagan, liberal, college-educated people. That's the demographic issue. So the solution, go to church, you pagan libs. Go to church. Well, Kristi Burton Brown, I sure appreciate you taking time to join the Jeff and Bill show. Thanks for giving us some analysis. Are we going to see an Amendment 80 school choice ballot initiative coming up in the future, you think?
You know, I think we're definitely looking at that. And if school choice does come under serious attack in Colorado by the legislature, we will be bringing Amendment 80 or something very similar back.
Good. I appreciate the fight you do on that. Keep school choice strong in Colorado. These are some of the best performing schools out there, are these charter schools. So, Kristi, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Have a great day.
You too.
All right. I want to talk to you about my friends over at Advanced Hair Restoration. Look, for many of us, it's happening. Your hair is thinning, your crown's disappearing. Maybe hair loss has you feeling your identity is lost altogether. Well, I've got good news for you. It's an incredible yet simple one-day treatment that starts growing your own natural hair the very next day. And it's guaranteed to grow for life. It's the Advanced FUE from Advanced Hair. Look, we've all seen the pills and lotions that come with monthly subscriptions. They help retain what you have. But what if what you want is your own natural hair permanently in specific areas? From Advanced Hair state-of-the-art facilities to world-class Dr. Tanya Pauls, it's not maybe will your hair regrow. It's guaranteed that your new hair will grow. You decide how much, how thick, and where. That's why Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver. For your free consultation, $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Give them a call at 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
Special counsel Jack Smith is evaluating how to wind down the 2 federal cases against Donald Trump before he takes office in light of longstanding Justice Department protocol that says a sitting president cannot be prosecuted. Smith charged Trump last year with election interference and allegedly possessing classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate. However, the Supreme Court ruling on immunity all but gutted both of his cases. Now that Trump has been elected to become the 47th president of the United States of America, he can no longer face prosecution. Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed Smith back in November of 2022 to take over the Justice Department's investigations into Trump. The legitimacy of that appointment has been hotly contested since that time. President Trump pleaded not guilty to all charges and said Smith was working a politically motivated prosecution aimed at helping Biden's and then Harris's campaign against him. Former federal prosecutor Nathan Hochman has won election as the Los Angeles County District Attorney. He defeated the Soros-backed super liberal George Gascon, unseating an incumbent known as the godfather of progressive prosecutors. During the campaign, Hochman highlights Gascon's soft-on-crime approach and criticized him for policies like banning prosecutors in his office from seeking the death penalty and ending cash bail for misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
A Keurig K Supreme Plus Smart Serve coffee maker valued at $200. Get it now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Just wrapping up a great interview with Kristi Burton Brown of Advanced Colorado, and now newly elected to the State Board of Education. Let's go to the phone lines. Mike, Denver. Good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning, Mike.
Hey, Jeff and Bill. I just want to say thank you so much for what all you guys do for the state of Colorado and having this station available to us, the citizens here. I live in Denver and have spent 45, a little more of my last 61 years in the state, and having grown up in the state as a disabled war vet and stuff. I've lived through a fair amount here in Colorado, and I'm really disappointed or sad in the direction that we're going. Somewhere between Jeff, what you had to say about the state and how to get things turned around, and what Kristi Burton Brown had to say, I think we're somewhere in the middle. You need jobs. You need good schools, and you need the amenities. You need cultural events, things that people can go to, and be safe. And along the lines of safe, my concern is that in 8 December 2021, I got knifed in the back in not the Denver Public Library downtown, but out on a remote library, and it nearly killed me. And so here I am, having lived through a great deal of stuff in normal life, and I had to be a veteran on a public computer in a library to get nearly killed. the sad part is I could not vote for the item to increase the funds for Denver Health, even though it passed, and I'm in my heart sort of grateful for that. They were the ones that saved my life. My thought is we've got to go in the tank before we can turn around and bring things back to a level of decency. And the sad part is they are being funded. I mean, thank God I went in 2021 and they were able to split me like a fish and open me up and throw sutures behind my lung and heart to stop the bleeding, or within a matter of a few minutes, I was going to be dead. And so they were able to do amazing things down there. And I want to give them blood. You know, I'm so grateful for them. I've gone back multiple times saying thank you, thank you, thank you. But the Denver area has opened itself up to so many problems. And we had Beth McCann for the last, I don't know how many years, downtown Denver. She is being replaced by the only nominee you could select on a Denver ballot was John Walsh. And it says right there, Democratic. It's like, I thought you're sort of empirical. When you get up to the DA level, you don't need necessarily party affiliation to turn around and identify with who you are. It's just sad that the city of Denver is so, it's going to take election cycles for us to get past Governor Polis, who knows my name through emails, Phil Weiser, who knows my name through emails. These people.
It's gonna take a bit, but Mike, I really appreciate the call and your story. My goodness, that is compelling. Geez. And you know, while we all may laugh that it's a blue island in the midst of all the red, there's a lot of consequences that come from being a deep blue island, and Mike's life is exactly one of them. I really appreciate powerful call. Let's go to Dean, Denver. Good morning, Dean.
Hey, good morning. Well, I just wanted to comment, Jeff. I'm sorry. I wanted to offer my condolences with your buzzsaw moment with Mike Rosen there during the election night coverage.
Okay, Dean. Okay, this is what I'm going to do.
I'm not trying to be rude.
Yeah,
that was funny. I was caught off guard. That was. Do you want to?
Do you want me to? Dean, actually, let's let Dean. Let's do this. And Jeff will give his perspective of it, but you were a third-party observer. What I want you to do for us is kind of like the Jeff and Bill players. Could you just recap for us? Give us a synopsis. And if we're going through the program and we're kind of looking at this play is about, give our listeners that missed that unique interaction your synopsis of what went on between my buddy Jeff Hunt and former coworker Mike Rosen. What went on?
Well, Jeff. And I agree, Jeff brought up that, Trump should, not hold back whatsoever, get to the federal budget with a sledgehammer. And Mike's response was, well, the first thing you have to realize is somewhere around 75%, or I don't know what the exact percentages are, it's entitlements. And he immediately went to, it doesn't matter who the president is, he believes, as well as many people do, that in 20 years we're headed for insolvency.
Yeah, he's not wrong about that. Look, I've grown up in the Republican movement my entire life, and I've known those Republicans that look at the system and go, how do we operate within the system? How do we change things? And those are the Republicans of the past. It would take a scalpel to the federal budget or the federal government. And I just think Donald Trump is a totally unique human being that walks in and changes the entire system. And I want to see him. Completely. I want to see him do that at the federal government level. So make the Democrats push back, go through the boundaries. Let's find out where they are. Maybe we can't cut out 75% of the budget because it's entitlements and the voters will rebel against it. And we're just inevitably going to run towards some collapse, some point around $50 trillion of debt. But I want to see what Donald Trump can do. And Republicans, this was such a mandate election. This comes along once in a lifetime. Drive. I want to see him so upset in DC with what the change is happening. I just want to see what it can do.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Bill. I'm sorry, Jeff. And one thing I wanted to say is I found it very interesting that I was unfamiliar with the most popular talk show in the morning.
Dean,
we're listening a little bit, Dean.
Go ahead.
maybe you should consider giving Mike a call and having him on for 15 minutes or so, and getting a chance to
Not a bad idea.
Talk it out with Mike.
It would be fun. It would be fun. Yeah, Mike didn't know who I was.
Yeah, he didn't. Like,
Pete keeps going. I'm sitting in his chair.
Yeah.
I'm sitting, and Mike's like, "Who's this Jeff Hunt guy? What is this all?" And then he and I got into it over Dave Williams too, just because I don't get pulled into the Civil War with the Republican Party. I just refuse to. I worked for the Republican Party, and I hate the Civil War that takes place in it. So, Dean, really appreciate the call. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Thanks for listening and spending election night with us. That was so cool.
So, Billy, tell us about Balanced Well Space.
Yeah, I know that all of us are getting up in the morning, and some of us are just jumping up and down and screaming and yelling, and others are like, oh, what the hell has happened? But either way, I want you to make sure that if you're celebrating or you're working through your stages of grief, you're feeling the best you possibly can. I want you to talk to my friends at Balanced Well Space. Balanced Well Space is a brand new medical facility here in Colorado. They've just opened up a new office in Lowry, right across from Hangar 2, plenty of parking, and the difference is integrative medicine. Until I talked to the team at Balanced Well Space, I didn't understand what that meant. It means under one roof, you can get regenerative care, trigger point injections, wave therapy, physical rehabilitation, neuropathic care, chiropractic care, and a whole bunch of other Star Trek level non-invasive stuff that you really just got to see to be believed. It's incredible what they can do using your own body's ability to heal itself. No cutting, they're not sewing you up, they're not taking anything out, nor are they putting anything inside either. And that's the crazy part about this. They're working with your body to make sure that your pain goes away. I used to live my life in a daily amount of pain. The only question is, where am I going to be on that scale? Is it going to be a 2 today or is it going to be a 7? But it's always there. It's not there anymore. I wake up in the morning and I feel fantastic. I feel 10, 15 years younger. The coolest part is I'm going out there doing things that I haven't done in years. You know, I was shoveling snow yesterday. You know, it didn't hurt. My back. My back didn't hurt. You know what also didn't go weak on me? My knee. And I do several walks. We take care of the walk across the street. We take care of another house in the neighborhood. So I'm out there. I am using my body. And it didn't hurt. That's unusual for me. That's not my experience last winter. But thanks to the people at Balanced Well Space, that's how I'm living my life now. No, the shoveling snow wasn't on my goals of things I wanted to be pain-free from. But it is a positive. And if you can just get rid of that pain, you'd take it, wouldn't you? So take this option. BalanceWellSpace.com. BalanceWellSpace.com. Talk to Dr. Julie, Dr. Jess. They'll evaluate where you are, and they'll talk to you about your pain and what you want to go away and things you want to start doing again. They put together a pain plan that is just focused on you. And the coolest part is every couple of weeks, you get reevaluated. They ask you how you're doing. They evaluate the treatment and see where your range of motion is and also level of pain and so much more. Your current medical team isn't doing that. You can go to great doctors all over the city. None of them are going to sit down and talk about you with everybody else. They're not going to get together and make sure that all the stuff you're doing is making sure you get to the place you want to be. That's what Balanced Well Space does. That's why you should talk to my team that I trust. BalanceWellSpace.com, BalanceWellSpace.com. They can make the difference in your life. They made in mine, and helps out Jeff and I if you tell them you heard about them here on our show, because, you know, that's how this thing works. So if you do that, boy, do we appreciate you. But bottom line, they'll make you feel better. BalanceWellSpace.com.
Great to hear that, Bill. We'll continue with your calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
A Keurig K-Supreme Plus Smart Serve Coffee Maker valued at $200. Get it now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Billy, I'm looking on my Instagram. Yeah. I'm the king of the Instagram shopping. I may have to get these for my wife.
What is it?
They're the Donald Trump dancing pajamas.
Oh my God, that's funny. That's
for all your Christmas needs.
I might have for last Christmas bought a sweatshirt for my wife, and she wears it all the time. Somewhat inappropriate at times. Okay, so this is what it says on the front. It's a blue sweatshirt. And in white letters, big white, just like New York Times font letters, it says, "Be kind."
Nice.
And then underneath, in little tiny white letters below it, it says, "Of a B word." So there's two messages. And so I gave it to my wife saying, "This fills both buckets." And she goes, "Yes, it does."
I have met your wife. I've only seen the sweet side of her.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go to Jay, Denver. Good morning, Jay.
Hey, good morning. Great show. Thanks for everything you all do to allow us to call in and agree or disagree, whichever way, right?
You bet.
That's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the whole point, is a bi-directional conversation versus just a broadcast of what we see from the major media.
Yeah, just like on that other show in the morning. Okay, sorry, sorry, something in my throat. I apologize.
Well, it is a big issue because we don't have a chance to talk, and a lot of us don't get together, and electronic devices actually separate us. They don't unify us. That's my opinion, physically. So I went to go vote in person at a large county. I'm not going to say specifically where that was because I don't want them knocking on my door, but voting machines are just there in person, and you can vote in person. And of course, it's a large billboard type device that you use just like when you take your license or test for your license. And of course, I read my 108-page ballot book. Did you see that book? 108 pages.
Yeah, we got about 25 seconds. What's up?
Okay, real quickly, and I'll follow back up with you. One of the amendments was wrong. The boilerplate in the amendment was wrong. It said nothing about that amendment. Yes, and I printed a version. The man came over. I can hang on if you need to after. The man came over from the voting booth that was working there, verified it. He took pictures. We notified the secretary local and the Secretary of State's office, and it was absolutely inaccurate. I know, and it was a person.
Really? Wow.
We found it.
When that happens, and I've heard a few things from similar people, take pictures. Take pictures. It really does matter. Jay, I really appreciate the call. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
News Talk 710 KNUS. missed it. That one.
That's a good debate.
I am the debate disaster. Yes.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, November 7th. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You just woke up in the greatest country in history. You're off and running, and Donald Trump is going to be president in just under 3 months.
Yeah,
So
Mrs. Jeff is getting new PJs.
That's right.
Jeff showed me a picture of them. They rock.
I might be
They
buying
rock.
those for Christmas for somebody.
Okay.
I'm
She's
the
not
king.
listening.
I am the king of Instagram shopping.
It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
It is
So
fantastic. You found
that
something
you
special. That is cool.
advertised to me on Instagram. I'm like, oh yeah, that.
It's so easy. It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's just a click and
It's always
yeah.
quirky stuff, and it's
It
never
is.
really anything you need. But
No, and they found out that inside the Instagram and TikTok advertising, that works more rather than, hey, I have got the best banana slicer ever.
Right.
Watch this. No, it's the quirky fun stuff because
Yeah.
that's what you're there for
it's
anyway.
like
That's
Donald
what
Trump
works.
dancing pajamas.
Yes,
So-
exactly. That's exactly it.
A few people in my life may be getting those, and it's the YMCA dancing.
Thing
So-
is, I'm kind of disappointed they don't have the footies in them because little footy pajamas
Yes,
like
that would be
fun.
good.
That'd
I've
really cool.
learned with the women in my life,
Yes.
if I buy things that make them warm,
Yes.
I do very well
Oh yes.
for
yes.
gifts.
Yes, make them anything that makes them warm or makes them smell good.
Yes.
Those work really well. Really well. Yeah, we'll have to when we
It's
get
pretty
closer.
easy, actually.
When we get closer to Christmas, we'll have to talk about perfume shopping and stuff because
Yeah.
I have got that down.
Dude, I would
I'm
never
good at
buy
that.
perfume for somebody.
Oh no way.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's
I
my
don't
thing.
even know how I'd be like, it all smells good.
Yeah. Oh no. That's in fact, I have gone shopping and been there at the perfume counter and stuff and talking to them, and the lady's like, you know what you're doing. Like, yes, I do. And she goes, you're
There's
actually
so many sides
yeah.
to you that
I know exactly what I'm doing there. I'm really good at it too. Yeah. My wife's like, oh, this is interesting. Thank you. Yeah. And some of the stuff that I bring in and give to her becomes regular stuff that she's used for years. Yeah. So
Oh, very
yeah,
cool.
we'll get there. We'll get there for Christmas. I'll help everybody out. We'll do some shopping together.
Well, we've got a lot to cover this hour. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson, we're going to be talking with Nicole Hunt, my spouse, who serves as a spokesperson and issue analyst for Focus on the Family. She's done the deep dives. I mean, she's the brain that the nation taps into on these pro-choice abortion amendments that are being passed all over the country. She has studied the funding sources, the turnouts, the results. What are the trends? And at our house, it's like daily she's doing at least 4, 5, 6 interviews.
Yeah.
So everybody calls her to talk about what she's found. She's brilliant. She's going to give us a little bit of her time.
Yeah.
Tell us about what happened with Amendment 79 here
And
in
normally
Colorado.
when Jeff gets home in the afternoon or the evening and he's talking to Mrs. Jeff, she then asks him lots of questions about why I'm allowed to do You Choose the News and choose the stories.
There's only one.
I know, only one. We will not refer to that today. I'm so excited to talk to her.
All right, she'll be joining us. But first, news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Morning, Jeff and Billy. Looking forward to that, Jeff. 25 in snow in Denver, expecting a high of 39 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
He's an amazing human being. He has had a long, stellar career in the military, where he flew Black Hawk helicopters and served as a commander. He will be survived by a wonderful wife, a sister, and parents.
A Colorado hero, an officer killed in the line of duty last night. Golden Police Chief Joe Harvey shared the news with tears in his eyes that the 33-year-old officer was hit and killed while investigating a crash on Highway 58.
Obviously, this is a very difficult situation, and particularly for a city like Golden, but more broadly for the law enforcement family.
Chief Harvey says 2 officers were run over by a suspected drunk driver. Both got trapped underneath the car, and only one survived with serious injuries. The victim's wife asked that the name not be released. The driver who struck the officers was taken into custody. Multiple law enforcement agencies in the area lined up with lights flashing in a procession for the officer as the highway was shut down for nearly 4 miles. A winter storm watch for Denver and the Denver area goes into effect tonight. Douglas County does not have school today because of icy roads. The race for the 8th district congressional seat is still too close to call in Colorado. Election returns showed Republican Gabe Evans narrowing the lead of Democrat Yadiro Caraveo to about 2,400 votes. Meanwhile, Democratic candidate Adam Frisch conceded his race to Republican Jeff Hurd in CD3. Hurd will... Yes.
We had Adam on the show. He was one of the few Democrats willing to come on the show.
Oh,
I always
right.
appreciated
remember
that.
Yeah,
about
I do too. He was actually pretty good.
I think he's done. I don't think he'll run again. That's twice
No?
now. 3 times?
Gotcha.
3 times? Twice. But he's
I
probably
think
done.
you're right. I think I read something that said it was his 3rd time, I think.
Yeah.
Hurd will replace Republican Lauren Boebert, of course, who won her 4th district race. President Biden will address the nation coming up soon in the next hour. Biden spoke with Trump Wednesday and congratulated him on his election victory and said, Corn Pop was a tough dude. Hey, you got one of those MAGA hats? Republicans are confident they'll take control of the House of Representatives once all the votes are counted. The GOP needs a dozen more seats to keep control. DJT is putting together a transition team before January 20th. He'll have to fill around 4,000 positions, including 1,200 that require Senate approval. That should be easier with a Republican-controlled Senate. Political analyst, former poli-sci professor, Dr. Arlene. She runs into a man at a store on election day, and then she did a video about it. She was buying champagne to celebrate. She told the man she knew Kamala Khan was going to win. I don't think she used the word Kamala Khan, her name, but she said Harris was going to win. She was talking trash on TikTok for months leading up to the election. Here she is.
And I said, she's going to win this, right? And he says, oh, well, it's very, very close. And I said, no, it's not. He says, well, what do you mean? I said, no, it's not. The women of America are making their voices heard. Reproductive rights is what it all comes down to. And the women are voting in numbers relative to men that are unbelievable. She's won this. And I said to him, she's going to take every one of the swing states plus Iowa. And he said, oh, but the numbers are so close. I said, I'm a political analyst. I'm telling you right now, the numbers are there. She's taking this election. And then I said to him, you realize, and he didn't tell me who he voted for, but of course I knew. And I said, you do realize you wasted your vote, right? And I didn't care. And I walked out with my bottle of champagne and happily walked home. Bye-bye.
Dude, the poetic justice of that, Blake, is brilliant.
Isn't it?
Brilliant. This is why that person right there is exactly why Donald Trump is president.
Absolutely.
The appeal to authority. I am a political scientist. The arrogance, the shaming,
pledge your allegiance
to jerk.
Yeah, jerk. What a jerk, but it's always the guys.
And then everyone's life is harder, but yeah, that issue out there about abortion, we're going to make it the primary issue. And you little plebe, you're going to have to sit there and deal with the worst economy, all because of abortion. And I am so smart, I'm going to tell you what to do. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, man.
Has anyone followed up with her?
Yeah. You know what? She came on yesterday and had a video. I didn't listen to it because I'm like, you're done. You're done. Bye-bye. Hey, while I have you, I think I have Jimmy Kimmel crying on the air last night. Did you see that?
I was just watching it. Yeah, play it.
Let's be honest. It was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go. For healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for
wait a minute, he just said
journalism.
Free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security.
This is the funniest he's ever been.
For our allies in Ukraine.
or his allies in Ukraine.
For NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing. And I just posted about that in between breaks.
Okay.
Blake.
Okay.
Look, I've cried after an election.
Yeah.
When you pour your heart into it and you fight and it doesn't go your way, there's been tears. But I was a political activist. Okay. Let's just be honest here. I'm a political activist on this show. That's who I'm not a journalist. Right. ABC needs to be honest with the American people that their Tonight Show host or whatever his title is, he's a political activist who is a second-rate comedian. Quit pushing these people onto us like this is a journalist, this is a comedian, this is an entertainer. Beyonce's just a singer. They don't know. They're political activists who happen to do this as a secondary job. But at their core, what Jimmy Kimmel really cares about is driving a progressive agenda, and he uses his show to do it.
Yep. He has a huge platform, and he's not, like you said, he's not funny. He's not funny anymore because he doesn't tell the truth. And comedy is about truth. Thank you for that. That is amazing. Nuggets beat the Thunder last night. Avs take on the Jets tonight. 23 in Brighton, 24 in Littleton, 25 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The same storm that brought us the snow yesterday is going to come back for a repeat performance. Mostly cloudy, redeveloping light snow as the day wears on. Temperatures in the low to mid-30s. Snow showers tonight, lows mid-20s. Snow becoming likely again Friday, and snow likely Friday night into early Saturday with additional accumulations likely. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So all you cons in the name of liberty and freedom are going to be paying for other people's abortions. Yay. And there's not a lot you can do. In fact, tomorrow we're going to talk about what Christians should do, thinking about how your tax dollars are now going to be going to fund abortions. And Gino Geraci is going to join us. He's on our sister station here. So we'll dive into the ethics of how to think about that. But there were a lot of ballot initiatives across the country that dealt with abortion. How did they turn out? Is this a real problem for conservatives and Republicans? Do they need to abandon their positions on abortion and the sanctity of life because we're never going to win any elections again? Or there's some little bright lights out there. The best analyst I know, I happen to be married to. She's a pro-life analyst and spokesperson for Focus on the Family. She has dove into funding mechanisms on these. She's looked at the numbers. She's analyzed trends. She's a national resource on this issue for lots of different media outlets and organizations. And she's taken time to join us this morning. Good morning, Nicole Hunt.
Hey, good morning, Mrs. Jeff.
Hello. How are you two doing?
Doing good.
Great.
Thanks for joining us.
So give us a sense of what happened Tuesday night on the issue of abortion throughout the country.
Yeah, so abortion as an amendment was on the ballot in 10 states. And what we saw was that the pro-life community was able to stop the abortion industry in their tracks on Tuesday night. They've had a 100% success record in passing pro-abortion amendments and defeating pro-life amendments. And in 3 states, the pro-life community was able to defeat abortion amendments. And those 3 states were Florida, Nebraska, and South Dakota.
Now, these victories weren't in like Florida, for instance. It wasn't that it was below the 50% threshold. It's just that some of these states have higher thresholds to get them into the Constitution, and they just didn't meet that high threshold, right?
Right. Yeah. So each state's a little bit different. And actually, Colorado and Florida were the only two states that had a threshold, a voting threshold that was higher than 50% plus one. Obviously, here in Colorado, we actually even went above 60%. So had we had a threshold of 60%, it wouldn't necessarily have helped the pro-life cause here. But in Florida, it did. And actually in Florida, Florida was the only state that the abortion industry has come up against with that high of a threshold. And so it was questionable whether or not they were going to be able to overcome that despite the huge funding gap. So coming into the last week before the election, in terms of financials that had been reported, the pro-life side had raised just over $10 million, while the abortion industry had raised $110 million. So we're talking about $100 million difference, and it still wasn't enough to overcome that 60% threshold in Florida. And I think that's a really big story.
Well, let's talk the money game here. You've dove into the funding reports, the FEC reports on a lot of these different organizations. It's a huge money difference.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So collectively, if we look at how much was raised by abortion activists in all 10 states, looking at it on Monday, the day before the election, we saw that they had raised about $234 million. And that's compared to the pro-life advocates who had raised about $37 million collectively. So big picture, over $200 million difference. Now, we'll still be getting numbers coming in probably for months to come now. Some of these deadlines until December. But what we see early on anyways is that there was a lot of money that the abortion industry was putting into these battles, much more than they ever have before. So the highest that they had ever put into an abortion battle was last year in Ohio. And we saw that they put in a little bit over $50 million, and that was compared to the pro-life side that was around 32 or 34 million. So far and beyond what they have ever contributed before. And I think they really thought that if they could turn out the abortion voter, it would affect lots of other races on the ticket, including that presidential spot. But what the exit polls are showing is that actually didn't always happen. There was a lot of folks who broke. They voted for Trump, while they also voted against abortion amendments, particularly in Arizona and Nevada. So I think that gives us interesting insight that maybe this abortion, the abortion idea isn't driving people to the poll, and it doesn't have the power that it did 2 years ago when Dobbs first overturned Roe, and that there were other issues that were driving people to go vote.
Now, let's talk Amendment 79. You sit on the board of Pro-Life Colorado. It was a coalition of organizations seeking to try to stop Amendment 79, which creates a right to abortion in the state constitution and repeal constitutional provisions banning the use of public funds for abortion. So now we're going to have a line item in the state budget that sends money from taxpayers to pay for people's abortions in the state. Why did it fail? Your side on this?
Yeah, I think from the Right to Know perspective, which, by the way, I do that in my own personal capacity, but from Right to Know Colorado's perspective, I do think that there was a massive funding difference. Again, it comes back to funding, but part of what is important is using the finances to educate the public on the impact that these laws are going to have on the people. And so what we know is that the pro-abortion side, they raised I think it was $9.2 million as of the last filings. And that's compared to the pro-life side that had about $500,000. And I will say that one of the things that makes it difficult is when you're constantly losing, and let's be honest, up until this Tuesday, there had been 7 states that we had lost the pro-life battle in when it came to statewide measures. On Tuesday night, we saw another 7, but we also saw 3 wins. Those wins help. They give hope to the base, and they also give hope to the donors. So I'm hopeful that moving forward, donors are going to be more interested to fight, seeing that there is a path to victory. But here in Colorado, one of the major problems was if you can't educate the public on what's actually happening in the state with regard to abortion policy or what this law is going to do, then they vote based on emotions and not on being informed.
Well, and I've run into this online. It's really bizarre. You'll make a statement like on X, or I'll make a statement on X that says, we have unrestricted abortion in the state of Colorado. And people are like, no, we don't. I'm like, yeah, like literally we do. I've been down fighting these laws. And they're like, no, we don't. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the doctor in Boulder named Dr. Hearn that does it. So there is this bizarre education gap that takes place there. But talking to Nicole Hunt, my wife, who's a life issues analyst and spokesperson for Focus on the Family. Now, you've been involved in the pro-life movement for a while now, well over a decade. You were a legal intern over at Americans United for Life. You've served members of Congress. This has been an issue that's close to your heart. You remember the fall of Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision, the excitement around the pro-life community. And since then, it seems to have been a steady march towards securing abortion rights in these states. What's going on with the pro-life movement from your perspective? Where are the problems? How are they reorganizing? And Donald Trump did not make the sanctity of life a major part of his platform. We could talk too about how the Republican Party needs to embrace it, but where's the pro-life community going at this point, and what changes need to be made there?
So I think that there was some division within the pro-life community about where you go after Roe's reversal. And I think what the last 2 years have shown all of us in the pro-life community is that while the law changed overnight, culture didn't. Culture has been taught by the law for the last 50 years that abortion is okay because it's legal. And so there's a lot of cultural work that needs to be done. And as we look at these abortion amendments that continue to be brought up, mostly, I might add, by the abortion industry, because they've seen it's a very successful path for them, what we've seen is that when we have specific tactics, we're more successful. As we discussed in Florida, when you have a higher threshold in a state like Florida that tends to be a little bit more conservative, then you're going to be able to likely defeat an abortion amendment. So, hey, if there are red states out there who want to protect their pro-life laws on the books, perhaps you should look at amendment thresholds and consider raising that through your state legislature. Another lesson we learned is in Nebraska. So in Nebraska, they had a pro-abortion amendment that was brought forward by the abortion industry. But then the pro-life community decided that they wanted to introduce a competing measure. And what made Nebraska really interesting was that both of those measures made the ballot. And so what was going to happen was if both of those measures got enough votes to move forward, whichever one had the highest number of votes was going to be the one that became the new law of the land. And so in Nebraska, their abortion amendment failed, their pro-life amendment passed, but their strategy for their pro-life amendment is very interesting. They went ahead and just basically constitutionalized what was already statutorily the law. And in Nebraska, they had a fight earlier this year. Some people wanted to put a heartbeat bill in place, but there wasn't enough support. So instead, they put a law in place that protected life beginning at 12 weeks. And beyond 12 weeks, abortion would be prohibited. That's the pro-life law that was approved by the voters in Nebraska, where you had a much more mixed bag. And then in South Dakota, it was a much more conservative group. But what we saw there was that big abortion didn't put money into the fight. No ACLU funding, no Planned Parenthood funding. It was more of a fair fight, I would say. You had direct voters who were contributing to the cause on both sides. And we actually saw that in South Dakota, the pro-life side outraised the pro-abortion side, and that they were able to overcome their abortion amendment there. So we see three different kind of pathways to victory, things that pro-life organizations should consider. And I think moving forward, what we've done well is we started to work together more cohesively. And I think if we can continue to tap into that and building coalition efforts, we're going to see more successes.
Talking with Nicole Hunt. She's a life issues analyst and spokesperson for Focus on the Family on Amendment 79. So is there any legal way forward? Are we just stuck in the state now paying for other people's abortions?
Well, I know that there are some efforts within the pro-life community here to start talking to lawyers to see if there's any legal, legal efforts that can be mounted against what we've approved. I mean, here's what I can tell all of the pro-life voters here in Colorado who are disappointed by what's happened. The culture work needs to continue to happen here, but don't forget, this isn't the end of the story. We at Focus on the Family are eagerly awaiting the day that Coloradans get the opportunity to remove the language of Amendment 79 from our Constitution. Just like it got in there, it can be repealed. So I would say that we'll pursue all the legal paths that we can, but we can also every single day work to change the culture in our state. When we do that, we can repeal this language. And in fact, we can add language that will protect life.
Talking with Nicole Hunt. She's a life issues analyst and spokesperson for Focus on the Family, mostly on the life issues as well. So if you go to x.com, you can follow her at Nicole Hunt there. Billy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I wanted to talk to Mrs. Gesture for a second and go a little bit larger. Same thing I did with Kristi Burton Brown. You were talking about changing the culture. Now, if we look at the electoral map, we have two little spots of blue in this big sea of red in the middle of the country, Colorado and New Mexico. Why are we still blue? What is going on? What is the culture in the other states that is not spilling over into Colorado, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think here in Colorado, one of the things that has always been an effort that has to be overcome by the pro-life community is our very libertarian streak when it comes to social issues, right? This idea that I don't want the government telling me what to do at all with anything related in my personal life. I think that there's other states obviously surrounding us that don't have that same libertarian streak. I think that there's also there's just evidence that as people are moving around, Colorado tends to be a place that we're bringing people in who have different values than the rest of the Midwest and the Front Range area. And so I think that's at play as well. I'm hopeful.
The pot smoking pro-abortionists in Kansas are not hanging out in Kansas anymore. Look what I got next door. I just go over there. Those are my people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hopeful that the cultural messaging is really important. And I think for the first time in the last 2 years, obviously there was an immediate reaction that was like, oh no, I don't like that the law has changed and I'm going to react to it. But over time, people see, okay, so the law has changed, but women are still getting abortions if they really wanted one. There were arguments, of course, in the South that pro-life laws killed women. That wasn't true. What killed women was taking abortion pills and then the side effects, because abortion pills are very, very dangerous for women. And now, because the abortion industry is so intent on having these women having access to them, but not having safeguards, which, by the way, a lot of these amendments that passed, they're going to end up prohibiting any kind of safety regulations on abortion clinics because they're going to be seen to be denying or impeding a right to a woman's abortion. So there's a lot at stake here for women, but as time goes on and people see that women who want abortions are still getting abortions, I think that a lot of people are maybe not going to be quite as visceral over the fact that the law changed. And it's going to give opportunity for people to actually consider, what do I think about abortion? Not how am I going to react to what the Supreme Court just did, but how do I feel about it? How do I feel about my kids getting abortions? How do I feel about my grandkids being aborted? Just morally, what do I believe it to be true? Because the law changed, and now it's possible that I might have changed my opinion as well.
Yeah, it's very rare that we have anything in our public life that's like fully embraced, like with no restrictions whatsoever, right? Like we don't do it on speech. We don't do it on the Second Amendment. And yet with abortion, it's like, oh, no. We can't put any like late term abortion. No, we're going to publicly fund it. We're not really going to have medical oversight on it. We're going to allow it to happen at all stages, even right up until the moment of birth for perfectly healthy children. And so it feels like what you're getting is an emotional response to the Supreme Court decision, not necessarily rational policymaking. And so as the pendulum swung back following Dobbs' decision, hopefully people can jump in and go, killing a baby at 9 months right before it's born simply because you don't like its sex is not the right thing to do. And maybe we can have some common sense restrictions on just because there's nothing else in public life where we just allow it totally unrestricted.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point because, and I can see that, and I think that's where the pro-abortion side fails on the idea of trying to be too stringent on not giving it all, because there is an argument that the pro-abortion side could make to outlaw those late-term abortions, but then still allow the early ones. And you can just look at basic percentages. That if I'm talking about strategy, and if I'm in that pro-abortion group meeting, I'm like, give up this small percentage of late-term abortions.
They don't have to, though. But as activists, they don't have to.
I know, but I'm saying that's their bad strategy. They hurt themselves on the messaging because of being so intractable. They seem like they're not willing to give anything, which it's hard to come to an agreement with anybody like that on any issue. If the person sitting across the table won't give an inch, you're stuck.
Well, Bill, that's how you and I work. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You do everything I tell you to do.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. And Nicole, I got one more thing because, again, I really love how your mind works. And this is Nicole Hunt. This is Mrs. Jeff joining us here on the Jeff and Bill Show. Now, she's here because she is a life issues analyst and spokesperson for Focus on the Family. So we're talking about the abortion issue and what went on. Earlier in the conversation, she accurately showed about how 10 states had abortion issues, and they won in 3: Florida, Nebraska, South Dakota. Now, I'm not sure if this is fair or not, but this is more of a philosophical question. You outlined in the last answer about Colorado having this very libertarian bend, and I agree with you. Now, what I see as a huge hurdle for abortion and also the pro-life movement inside of Colorado is that libertarian bend. And what I mean by that is the idea of personal freedom. I believe that in Colorado, the libertarians may not support abortion, but don't like not having that choice. The libertarian side of them sides on the idea of freedom, choice, and sometimes those choices are things I'm not going to agree with. 1, would you agree with my premise? 2, if so, how do you possibly change those libertarians that are so invested in the personal freedom and making the choices you may disagree with? How do you get them to the table to agree with you?
I mean, I do think that I think that there are ways that this law could actually go against what libertarians, want, which is more freedom and more freedom of choices. For example, as I mentioned, under this law, it's very possible that, it's very, very likely that the legislature is going to come back to session in January, and they're going to create a big fund for money to go to fund abortions. Well, that's something that goes against the libertarian streak, which says, I'd like to keep more of my money, and if I don't want to pay for somebody else's abortion, then why should I be forced to pay for somebody else's abortion? I think that plays into the mentality of the libertarian. Something else, libertarians who may want to pursue an abortion may actually want to do it in a safe way, or may want their daughters to be able to be seen by doctors and then followed by doctors if they're hemorrhaging out on a table. They might want to know that that's happening to their daughter at an abortion clinic. But under this law, it's very likely that parental notification law is going to be repealed. So there are several factors here because it's taking the power away from the people and it's putting it back into the hands of the government to say, we know best. And you should follow our rules, and we should do abortion our way. And so I think those are all things that could argue. You could argue to a libertarian, and they could be more sympathetic to.
Nicole Hunt, life issues analyst and spokesperson for Focus on the Family. Thanks for taking time to join us and talk about Amendment 79 today.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yep. Nice to be with you guys. Bye.
It continues to be an issue. It's not going to go away just after this election. I think the strength of the issue as far as a turnout mechanism for Democrats is going to wane. You saw it wasn't 2022. And some of these states are going to lock it down. And I think they probably could run into the Mark Udall problem of just going, all right, we got other issues to talk about. Like, I understand this is an important issue, but the solution for me is strong families, regular church attendance, because I'm a social conservative. I want people, to experience the freedom and life and goodness that comes with that type of lifestyle. And I've just got a lot of other problems with the whole abortion industry, but we can get to that. Talk to us about Amendment 79. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. Did you support it? Is this good to constitutionalize abortion into Colorado, even if it means taxpayers are going to have to pay for it? And does that kind of, from my perspective, violate the notion of freedom and independence? Can we pass an amendment to make you pay for my church now?
Yeah, that's interesting. I like where you went with that. Yeah, because can you then force this that, that'll be interesting. And then what would you do with things like support with Ukraine or support for Israel? Because there could be a whole bunch of voters in Michigan and Minnesota that may not be so excited about their tax dollars going to Israel.
Going to those.
Yeah.
Right? So
this is going to be fun.
Lots to talk about. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. I want to talk to you about my good friend Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. Dan is pro-life, pro-family, pro-America. That matters because who you choose to represent you in an injury case is like a giant billboard that tells everybody who you are, what you stand for. And if you hire somebody you've never met, kind of one of those more sleazy ambulance chasing lawyers, well, you're going to tell the insurance company who you are and what you're looking for. You want a guy that's solid on the values. Dan Caplis is the son of a police officer. He's a former seminarian. He's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. But more than that, Dan is a real winner. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law, a serious firm for serious cases, but he's not just reserved for the rich and wealthy. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis. That means he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. If you need Dan's help, give him a call, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLIS Law.com. We'll continue with your calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS. Isn't Mrs. Jeff so cool?
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
An attorney for Karen Reed argued in front of the state's highest court that several charges related to the death of her Boston police officer boyfriend should be dropped. Reed is accused of ramming into John O'Keefe with her SUV and leaving him to die in a snowstorm in January of 2022. A judge declared a mistrial in June after finding that jurors couldn't reach an agreement. However, a retrial on the same charges is set for next year. The defense is making the same arguments they made in briefs to the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court that trying Reed again on charges of second-degree murder and leaving the scene would be unconstitutional double jeopardy. Pro-abortion measures see mixed results on Election Day. Bob Agnew has the details.
Pro-abortion forces lost Tuesday on a Florida ballot measure, but prevailed in 2 other states. By rejecting adding abortion rights to their state constitution, Florida voters kept a ban on abortion after the first 6 weeks of pregnancy. It's the first time pro-abortion forces have lost in a statewide ballot question since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. It was a victory for Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. Pro-abortion measures were adopted in Maryland and New York. Bob Agnew reporting.
BMW reported a 61% drop in its third quarter profit, missing analyst expectations because of slumping sales in China and brake problems, sending its shares to their lowest level in more than 2.5 years.
In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
A Keurig K-Supreme Plus Smart Serve Coffee Maker valued at $200. Get it now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show, talking about the impacts of Amendment 79, as well as a lot of the other abortion ballot initiatives that were across the country. 7 of 10 passed, but that was the first time in any election where 3 didn't, one of them being Florida. And exit polls showing that it wasn't quite the top issue. Is this thing running its legs? Is it doing what the Supreme Court wanted it to do? Which is, let the people make a decision. Okay, well, people in a lot of these states are saying they want abortion. And is it as powerful of a drive-out tool for the Democrats as it was in 2022? Let's go to the phone lines. Josh, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Morning, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on. My big thing, once I got out of the military and got into Republican politics in Colorado, one of the things that drove me nuts and continues to do so is the fact that it's all or nothing with the Republicans. There is, as the Democrats are eroding our freedoms and our values, we want everything. And if it's not everything, we just refuse to even consider an option.
Yeah, Judge,
pro-life.
There's some, you're definitely right. But look, it was the Republicans that were in many ways trying to do just a late term abortion ban. Was that like 4 years ago or something like that? But there is an element, and I happen to be one of them, that life begins at conception. But I'm willing to negotiate because politics is the art of the possible. And most of the people in Colorado aren't with me on this issue. So if I can chip back, start at the other end and work the way back. Okay, no taxpayer funding for this. Let's not kill babies right before they're about to be born. And then maybe the cultural change and they'll come over more on my side. But there's an element out there that won't even support an effort on a late-term abortion ban because it doesn't go far enough.
But we're horrendous with messaging. We do not connect emotionally with people. Democrats, you have to respect the other side. I mean, they're always mentioning personal stories. Kamala mentioned that a lady died from, I think it was going from South Carolina to Georgia or something like that, about how she died trying to get an abortion because she couldn't get in her state. The problem is we don't tell stories about how this woman wanted an abortion and now she has a child, and how many pro-life and single mothers out there, organizations there are, all run by women.
Yeah.
But our messaging sucks. It's late-term abortion, you're killing babies, but it's not the actual stories that emotionally connect outside of the Republican Party to move the needle back into protecting unborn babies.
Josh, you got a great point. And one of the challenges being our victims can't speak. Yeah. So it's hard to tell those stories.
The other one that was based on that messaging, and I think he's right about touching the emotional side, but didn't work 2 days ago. That messaging didn't work. Kamala lost. So all the good messaging, all the things that he's tied up in, ended up losing. And the one that surprised me the most, as your lovely and talented wife pointed out, the loss in Florida. That surprised me because of it being a 6-week ban. I thought that was going to be a bridge too far for even some people that support the pro-life side of things, that they would say, well, okay, fine, I like it, but it didn't. So that's the idea. Is I think Josh is right on many things about the Democrat messaging, but didn't work 48 hours ago.
It just wasn't the top issue for sure. And polling showing that. Did you wake up this morning with joint pain? Does it hurt when you don't even, or when you do the most routine physical activity? You're looking to ski this year. You want to get out and go hunting. Well, you got to stop what you're doing and listen. You deserve a life of comfort and ease with no surgery and no meds. At QC Kinetics, they can get you there. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative cellular treatments for joint pain. This is an all-natural approach that harnesses your body's healing properties to treat the root cause of your arthritic pain. Everybody's talking about this now. It's so cutting edge. The protocols developed by QC Kinetics are life-changing for so many people. Tens of thousands of satisfied patients with more every day. Yes, you can have real lasting relief from chronic joint pain without drugs, without surgery, and without downtime. Discover your options with advanced regenerative medicine at QC Kinetics. The consultation is absolutely free. 303-900-8986. That's 303-900-8986 with locations in Aurora, Superior, Highlands Ranch, and the Springs. We'll continue with your calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
A Keurig K Supreme Plus Smart Serve Coffee Maker valued at $200. Get it now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details. RockyMountainBargains.com.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Kamala Harris lose. Is it racist voters, sexist voters, abortion not a key issue anymore?
I think it was vibes.
Was it really just the economy, stupid?
Yeah, you're right.
They tried so hard. It is amazing, the analysis coming out. 52% of white women supported Trump. So the Oprahification missed the mark.
Yeah, it didn't work.
And then they got really worried at the end there about black men, and black men voted 80% in favor of Kamala Harris.
Yeah. And they found it was bizarre. And there are some things in the demographics that are very, very strange. And I talked about those non-college educated white women, and they 2% in favor of Kamala. That's it. I thought it was going to be larger, and that's what I'd seen. It was crazy. Yeah.
Wow. Well, the conversations and analysis will continue. Charlie Kirk's up next. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Stay warm today.